Okay, we're just waiting for confirmation that YouTube is running here. Sure she is. Her internet tends to kick in and out. How are we doing, Jane? Are we running?
Yeah.
Okay.
Says live on YouTube. Okay.
We're good?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, welcome everybody. Beautiful sunny morning here, even though it's cold. Welcome to the Planning Committee meeting for December 17th, and I'm going to call this to order at 9:02. So as all meetings, I'm going to state that this is an electronic meeting to be held in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act 2001 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The members present, I believe we're just missing Councillor Hayes, who often has issues with her internet, so we'll expect her to pop in shortly. And our senior staff are here. I see Mr. Pink, and I know that Mr. Sharp is here, and Mr. Hammond. So I acknowledge that we have a quorum. And we accepted input from the public from planning@muskokalakes.ca. I know we had emails that went to all the councillors. I don't believe we had anything come in through that email address. All right, motions are going to be pre-populated with random movers and seconders to expedite the meeting, and members shall physically raise their hand until the chair has confirmed the vote. If the vote is unclear, a verbal vote shall be recorded, but this won't be considered a recorded vote. There is no supplementary agenda. And now, if I can ask for anybody has any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Nope, seeing none. All right, so I see the delegations have been invited for 9:45. So I think what we'll do then is just start with our public meetings. And first on the agenda is Gisborne and Lang. So there you are, Mr. Sharp. Please take it away for us.
Good morning, Chair Bridgman, members of Planning Committee, applicants and agents, and members of the public. The first applications to be heard are consent applications B/07/08/20/ML and zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA-18/20 in the names of Gisborne and Lang. The applications have been submitted concurrently, and the subject lands are known municipally as Island Clifton, SL4-29 and SL4-30. I would direct committee's attention to the sketches of existing and proposed conditions on pages 36 and 37 of your agenda package. The purpose and effect of the applications is summarized as follows. The consent applications will have the effect of reconfiguring two existing lots. It is noted that no new lots are proposed. A number of zoning bylaw exemptions are required to facilitate the reconfiguration. It is noted that all buildings and structures are existing, although some buildings will be removed, relocated, and reduced in size, and will undergo a change in use. Bylaw 2020-116 will permit the resultant Gisborne lot to have 258 feet of lot frontage and 0.94 acres of lot area. Bylaw 2016-116 will also permit the resultant Lang lot to have 241 feet of lot frontage and 0.54 acres of lot area. The subject lands are zoned waterfront residential WR5 and are located on Clifton Island. Minimum lot requirements are 300 feet of lot frontage and 2 acres of lot area. Bylaw 2020-116 will also permit the maximum lot coverage on the resultant Gisborne and Lang lots to be 10.9% and 8.2% respectively, whereas the maximum permitted lot coverage is 8%. Bylaw 2020-116 will also permit a storage shed on the resultant Gisborne lot to be set back 5.2 feet from a new side lot line, resulting from the proposed lot reconfiguration. Bylaw 2020-116 will also permit a sleeping cabin on the resultant Gisborne lot to be set back 10 feet from a new side lot line resulting from the proposed lot reconfiguration. The minimum required interior side yard setback is 15 feet. Bylaw 2020-116 will also permit a cumulative dock width of 51.6% on the resultant Gisborne lot and 22.3% on the resultant Lang lot. The maximum permitted cumulative dock width is 15% of each respective lot frontage. Bylaw 2020-116 will also permit a cumulative single-story boathouse width of 20.9% on the resultant Gisborne lot and 12.7% on the resultant Lang lot. The maximum permitted cumulative single-story boathouse width is 12% of each respective lot frontage. Bylaw 2020-116 will also permit 2 dwellings and a sleeping cabin on the resultant Gisborne lot. Apologies, excuse me. A maximum of 2 habitable buildings are permitted, being a dwelling and a sleeping cabin. Bylaw 2020-116 will also repeal bylaws 2014-27 and bylaw 2015-159. These bylaws permit exemptions from lot coverage, cumulative dock width, cumulative single-story boathouse width, and shoreline structure side yard setback requirements, and were necessary for the construction of an existing single-story boathouse and docks on the existing Gisborne lot. Notice of this public meeting under the Planning Act was circulated 23 days in advance, and 4 submissions have been received to date. The first submission is by the District Municipality of Muskoka's Planning and Economic Development Department. In summary, the district staff would not be opposed to the approval of the applications, provided that appropriate development control techniques are used to ensure that development occurs outside of areas identified as having a high wildland fire risk. District staff have requested to be notified of council's decision, and that is signed by Cassidy Fior, district planner. The second submission is by Nick Snyder, the township's chief building official, and Mr. Snyder has advised that he has no comments. The third submission is by Sandy Boss, a township building inspector who has undertaken a standard servicing inspection. Mr. Boss recommends that the applications be approved from a servicing standpoint and has not recommended any specific conditions in that regard. The fourth submission is by the township's Public Works Department. Mr. Tim Sopko advises that the resultant Lang lot will be required to have a new civic number assigned if the applications are approved. I have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration. The circulated public notice identifies a proposed exemption from a minimum 100-foot setback requirement for a new leaching bed distribution pipe on the resultant Gisborne lot. The setback is measured from the high water mark, and a site inspection by Sandy Boss and a local septic system installer has confirmed that the required setback can now be achieved, and the circulated exemption from this setback requirement is no longer required. Supporting documentation for this is provided on pages 38 through 40 of the agenda package. I can also clarify that the circulated public notice indicated in error that the resultant Gisborne lot will contain 3 dwellings. Again, I'd just like to clarify that the lot will contain 2 dwellings and a sleeping cabin as indicated in my report. I can also clarify that the sun deck identified in figure 10 on page 17 of the agenda package is not intended to be removed as indicated in my report. It will remain. However, the associated sleeping cabin will be removed. Staff have recommended a requirement to enter into an agreement with the township to revegetate portions of the resultant lots. Securities will be required as part of this agreement, and it will be registered on title. In regards to the comments by district staff regarding wildland fire risk, I would note that the resultant lots will continue to be subject to the township site plan control process, and consideration can be given to evaluating areas of high wildland fire risk at the time that redevelopment triggers that process. I have no further comments at this time, and I would be happy to assist committee with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. I believe Mr. Fauner is here to speak. Can we let him in then? Thanks, Jane. Sorry. Oh, is it? Thank you. Oh, yes, I am. Okay, Mr. Fauner, we just need your visual here. And this is where I get to say happy birthday.
Oh, thank you very much.
It's your birthday today.
Yeah,
So, okay, but back to work. Okay, take it away.
I didn't think I'd be celebrating my birthday with 3 public meetings, but however, anyways, thank you very much, Chair Bridgman, members of committee, Stephen Fauner, Northern Vision Planning Limited, 109 Meadow Heights Drive, Bracebridge, Ontario, P1L 1A4. I'm here representing Jason and Joanna Lang, as well as Michael and Maureen Gisborne. This is a complicated application, certainly, and I appreciate staff's input and staff's positive report. I do have a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to sort of take a little bit of a higher level on this. I think staff has pointed out the numbers quite well on pages 3 and 17 of the staff report. So, you know, I could spend all sorts of time on numbers, but I don't think that, I'm hoping that people have had a chance to have a look. And I'm going to take a little bit of a higher level approach to this application. So I'm hoping I can get the PowerPoint presentation up. Thank you very much. Go ahead, next. So the proposal, currently the lands are 2 through lots. They have frontages on both north and south sides of the island. And the proposal is to obtain consent on the 2 lots with really the line running east-west. So sort of initially it seems fairly simple, but obviously there's a number of existing buildings. Next. So we're proposing to reduce the number of total habitable buildings from 7 to 4 and reduce the overall coverage. Another very important thing is that by doing the lot line change, it facilitates a septic system on the Gisborne property, of which they currently do not have a septic system. It does, however, bring on quite a number of zoning bylaw exemptions, as you've probably seen in the notice and Bryce read out. Next. So these are the existing lands, and I'll just point out the Lang lands on the left. There are 4 habitable buildings on that property. You can see the frontages are fairly small. It is a through lot. It does qualify as an existing lot of record, but the frontages are very small. The easterly lot, you can see there that there's a dwelling. There are two other sleeping cabins. The sort of north portion of this, in fact, is a cliff heading down to the north. It's extremely steep. And much of the Gisborne lands is really on a slope. There's not much level land at all on the whole property. Next. So this would be the proposed configuration. The buildings currently on the south shore are certainly quite close together, and it does make sense. I think when Bryce was out on the property, he realized once he was there that certainly the lot division made more sense. It does add frontage. There's quite a bit of frontage now with each of the lots. Again, we're reducing the number of habitable buildings, and most of the buildings are oriented to the south shore. The Lang portion of the property used to be part of Wilson's Lodge, actually. And you can tell by the white clapboard buildings that are on portions of that property. So there's certainly some history there, but the application certainly makes sense with the way the buildings are located. Next. This is the existing dwelling on the north side of the Lang lot. Next. And this is what I call the middle dwelling. This will be moved slightly to clear the proposed lot line across the property. Next. And this is the back portion of that. And that back part of the T, if you will, a portion of that is proposed to be removed. That's to help keep it away from the lot line. You can see the lids of the septic tile bed there and the septic system. That is for the north lot. That'll continue to service the north lot. Next. This is the dwelling on the south shore on the Lang property. Next. And this is the boathouse. It's a 3-slip boathouse, very low pitch, very old, and obviously in need of repair. Next. This is taken from behind the boathouse houses, and you can see how close they are. There is an encroachment. The boathouse on the right actually encroaches over the projected lot line. The one on the right is the current Lang boathouse. It encroaches over, and one advantage of the severance is that that encroachment will be cleared up. Next. This is the Gisborne dwelling, and you can see it's fairly well, it's in the trees, hidden in the trees. You really can hardly see it from the lake. Next. This is the existing sleeping cabin. This is going to be converted to a shed. Next. And this is currently a storage building. It's also the outhouse for the Gisborne property. That is to be removed. Next. This is a sleeping cabin at the top of the hill in the Gisborne property. It is to be removed. That is the deck that is to stay, although it does encroach onto the neighbors, and they've spoken to the neighbors, and that will be moved off of the neighbor's property. Next. So this is the appearance from the water. Certainly there are a number of shoreline structures on the south shore. You can see the smaller boathouse. It's a 3-slip, but by today's standards, there's no way you could do a 3-slip boathouse now. It's really only for very small boats. They are looking to retain those structures. They are all existing. Next. And this is another shot from the water as well. So again, you can barely see the Gisborne dwelling. Next. And this is back on the north side, and this is the dwelling and boathouse there. If we are successful, it's lands on the left there that's actually going to be added to this property. That's currently where the Gisborne north frontage is. That'll be added to this to give it contiguous frontage. Next. So again, just in terms of analysis, we were placing consent on these instead of doing lot additions because it's less complicated. Both lots are currently building lots. Next. And we're reducing the number of habitable buildings from 7 to 4. We're redistributing those, and we'll just go on next. There is a reduction in the overall lot coverage from 10.7% to 9.93%. So those are improvements, and certainly the lot frontages are improving as well because of the new configuration. Next. Shoreline structures are existing. I know that this may be a concern of committee. They do exist. They could remain as legal non-complying structures and not actually have them recognized in the bylaw. But the consolidation will actually eliminate the current boathouse encroachment. I know that there was a comment by Bryce in his report indicating, well, this will give additional development rights because there's an issue with the water lot and who owns it. But really what could happen is the Gisbornes could buy the Lang property, and that would eliminate that concern anyways, and the township wouldn't have any say in that. And that's something they are considering doing if the application sort of runs or goes off the rails. Next. And again, a big thing I believe is that the Gisbornes will get a new septic system on their property. I think that's significant. And again, there's concentration on the south shore. This will all be one lot. Right now, there's potential for conflict between the boathouse users as well as where the middle dwelling is located and the Gisborne dwelling as well. So there's certainly less potential for conflict by reconfiguring the lot line. Next. And as I mentioned, they can replace all buildings 1 for 1. We're trying to make improvements here. The Gisbornes could potentially purchase the Lang property and rebuild all of the existing buildings. So we're really hoping that with the improvements made, especially on the land buildings, that I'm hoping that committee will see their way through to a potential approval. Next. Just noting staff report. I wanted to make note the level area in front of the Gisborne dwelling is really the only level area on their property. But I have spoken with Bryce, and if plantings are required, he did indicate they'd likely be fairly limited. So we can live with that. We didn't want to see a forest planted there because that's really the only place where grandchildren can play actually on the property is that level area by the water. Next. So in conclusion, again, reduction of habitable buildings is a good thing. Overall coverage, we're going to have a new septic system or an area for it. Shoreline structure encroachments are addressed. Next. I guess that's it. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I had some more. So those are the main points. Again, trying to take a bit of a higher level than going through all the numbers, but there's some definite improvements with this. I know it's fairly complicated, but anyways, I think I'd like to think we've done a pretty thorough job of going through and coming up with some very positive things. So I'll leave it in your hands, Chair Bridgman, and here to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fonner. Just for clarification, are both properties running off of one septic system at this point?
No, the Gisborne property does not have a septic system. The Lang property does currently.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for this application? Jane, anyone waiting? Okay. Would there be anyone who wishes to speak against this application? Don't see anybody. Okay. All right. Then I will, oh, and welcome, Councillor Hayes. Good to see you here. Acknowledge that. And then I will open it up to committee for any questions, comments. Mayor Harding?
Thank you very much. My only question, I guess, would be to staff. I realize we are net bettering the property and removing a number of buildings. We're getting better lot coverage. Would there be any development rights that are being granted by this proposed lot severance? That's really my only question. Otherwise, I'm in 100% favor.
Mr. Sharp?
Through you, Chair Bridgman. Really, the only, I guess, development right that would be granted would be to the resultant Lang lot, in the sense that it opens up the potential that a sleeping cabin could be constructed in the future. However, I would note that the resultant Lang lot will be over coverage, and they would need to rectify that before adding any additional buildings or structures.
Right. So that's all I need. Thank you. I'm good.
All right. Anyone else have any questions? Comments? Let me see. Am I seeing none? Oh, okay. Yeah, Councillor Roberts?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Price. The grandfathering that would apply to this property. So we're giving up allowing them to do some special things here. But what would happen on the redevelopment? Could they build structures on the existing footprint right in the future? Like I'm thinking specifically the boathouses.
Mr. Sharp? Sorry, Mr. Sharp?
Through you, Chair Bridgman. So there's two boathouses on the southerly frontage. One belongs to the existing Lang lot and one belongs to the existing Gisborne lot. If the applications are approved, those boathouses will be amalgamated onto the resultant Gisborne lot, and they would be able to reconstruct them, replace them one for one. The bylaw that's before committee will lock those buildings and structures in place. I would note that the boathouse that currently belongs to the existing Lang lot and that encroaches onto the existing Gisborne lot does encroach over flooded lands that are in the ownership of Gisborne at the present time. So I have discussed this with the township's chief building official, Mr. Snyder, and he has confirmed that a building permit would not be available at the present time for that boathouse to replace it. So there would be some additional development rights granted essentially to replace that. But as Mr. Fonner indicated, you know, the shoreline structures are existing. Hopefully that answers your question.
Councillor Edwards?
Yes, thank you very much. And not through the chair, just a comment. It is basically overdeveloped as it is. We are gaining some with the removal of buildings and that, and I think it's I can support it. I think it's an improvement on what was there before, and everything is existing, so they would have rights. So I will support this.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any comments? All right, then I will read the motion. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that Planning Committee recommends to Council that consent applications B/07/08/20/ML Gisborne and Lang roll number 2-19-036/037 be approved with the following conditions. 1, that a registrable description of each resultant lot and any required right-of-way be submitted to the secretary treasurer along with a registered copy of the reference plan. 2, the consent agreement under section 5126 of the Planning Act be entered into with the township along with securities requiring revegetation of each resultant lot. This agreement is to be registered on title. 3, that confirmation be received that the township is satisfied that the resultant lots are satisfactory for on-site sewage disposal and that any problems identified with any existing sewage system be corrected to the satisfaction of the township. 4, that zoning bylaw exemptions be approved from the following requirements. A, minimum lot area and coverage. B, maximum lot coverage. C, maximum cumulative dock width. D, maximum cumulative single-story boathouse width. E, maximum interior side yards. And F, maximum number of habitable buildings per lot. And number 5, that bylaws 2014-27 and 2015-159 be repealed. Any discussion? Any comment? Okay, all in favor? You got it? Okay, thank you. That's unanimous. So thank you. Pardon me? Oh, it's carried. Thank you, Cheryl.
Just one more.
Okay, we need a second part to this. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that Planning Committee recommend to Township Council that zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA-18/20 bylaw 2020-116 Gisborne and Lang, roll numbers 2-19-036-/037 be approved subject to the recommended conditions of consent. Any questions? All in favor? We have unanimous again.
Everybody's there.
Okay, so I see it is carried. Mr. Zavitz, Councillor Zavitz wasn't here, but it has carried. So, okay, thank you. All right, we're now going to move on to our next zoning bylaw amendment, and that is Vanderwall. And I believe, Mr. Sharp, you're up for all of these today, so take it away.
Thank you, Chair Bridgman. The next application to be heard is zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA-24/20 in the name of Vanderwall. The subject property is known municipally as 1051 Hamels Point Road. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plan and elevation drawings beginning on page 103 of your agenda package. The purpose and effect of the application is summarized as follows. An existing dock is proposed to be enlarged and a new single-story boathouse with a peaked roof is to be constructed. Bylaw 2020-119 will permit a setback of 17 feet from the southerly side lot line projection, whereas the minimum required setback is 30 feet. Bylaw 2020-119 will also permit a cumulative single-story boathouse width of 29 feet, whereas the permitted maximum width is 27 feet. Notice of this public meeting under the Planning Act was circulated 23 days in advance and 11 submissions have been received to date. The first submission is by the District Municipality of Muskoka's Planning and Economic Development Department. In summary, district staff have no objection and request to be notified of council's decision. That is signed by Cassidy Fiore, district planner. The second submission is by Nick Snyder, the township's chief building official, and Mr. Snyder has advised that he has no comments. The third submission is by the township's public works department, and the department has no objections. The fourth submission is a letter of objection by Nick Christophe, an area landowner to the east and northeast of the subject property. In summary, Mr. Christophe's main concern is with the proposed side yard setback. He questions why compliance cannot be achieved and is concerned about precedent if the application is approved. The fifth submission is by Richard and Jill Reeves, who are area landowners, and they have no objection. The sixth submission is by David and Judy Massey, who are area landowners, and they have no objection. The seventh submission is by Hans and Jackie Strauss, who are area landowners, and they have no objection. The eighth submission is by Wayne Gibson, who is an area landowner, and Mr. Gibson has no objection. The ninth submission is by Norm and Lois Ruff, who are immediate neighbors to the north, and they have no objection. The 10th submission is by Al Moran, who is an area landowner, and Mr. Moran has no objection. The 11th submission is by Clive Wilkins, who is an area landowner, and Mr. Wilkins has no objections. I have prepared a detailed report for your consideration, and staff have no objection, and I have no further comments at this time, and I'd be happy to assist committee with any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sharp. I believe Mr. Fawner is coming in. Somewhere. Just waiting for Mr. Fawner, who is the agent for this application. There you are.
I'm
Okay,
here.
Mr.
Yep.
Fawner, there you go.
Good morning again. Thank you, Chair Bridgman. Steve Fawner, Northern Vision Planning. Today I'm, this particular public meeting, I'm representing Hans and Marianne Vanderwall, who own property on Hamels Point Road. Once again, I'd like to thank staff for their positive report. Certainly I had pre-consultation with staff as usual, worked through a few things and resulted in a positive report, so thank you. There's also 7 letters of support. The one in objection, the person is on Roberts Bay, not on Stills Bay. So anyways, I'm not sure the impact there, but I do have a PowerPoint presentation. If that could come up, that would be great. Thank you. Go ahead next. So the proposal is to put a boathouse on existing docks. The existing docks are located 17 feet from the side lot line. Sorry, the boathouse will be 17 feet from the side lot line. The actual docks are 14.5 feet. And we're looking at a boathouse, a 2-slip boathouse having a width of 29 feet where 27 is the max allowed. Next. So this is the site plan of the property showing all the buildings on the property. Immediately to the southwest of this property is the one with the infamous sailboat lift. And then further to the southeast is the marina property as well. Next. So this is a close-up of the proposed boathouse, again on existing docks that are there. And they were allowed at the 14.5 feet. Next. This is just showing from the front. So it's a peaked roof boathouse. There won't be a flat top. There won't be a deck on top. Next. This is the property looking at it from the water. The neighbor's boathouse is actually the one immediately to the left, and my client's property is the one in the middle with boathouses on each side. You can sort of see the dock there. Next. And this is closer in, and there's the subject dock that already exists. You get the dwelling, you can see the corner of the boathouse, and this is pretty much the extent of their frontage. Next. And this is getting in a little bit closer once again, and this is again the existing dock. That area, the side dock for sitting, will actually be reduced in size because of the 2-slip boathouse being put on the existing dock. Next. This is just showing the dwelling from the dock. Next. This is the existing dock as it is today. Next. This shows you the area between my client's dock and the neighbor's boathouse. There's certainly room there for ingress and egress of boats. That's not changing in this application. Next. And this is on the back on the other side of the dock. I just wanted to illustrate and just show you the shallow water that's there. You can also see that the shape of the shoreline is concave here. You can see that neighbor's 2-story boathouse, this is looking towards the north, actually sticks out way out into the lake much farther than this one will. It's tucked back into the shore as best it can on the property. The dock's been located where it is because of the shallow water. Next. And this again shows you the area between the boathouse and the existing dock for the person to the south. And that boat that you see, the Boston Whaler, will be in the boathouse if it is approved. Next. This is looking from the shore out between, and again, you can see the, there's still good distance for ingress and egress there, and that's not being affected by the boathouse. And once again, this is showing and shows you the lift for the sailboat there. Next. So natural form is to dominate, as we know. That's a cornerstone policy. The proposed boathouse is covering 17.1%, where 16% is allowed. It's an additional 2 feet in width. The remaining shoreline you could see was natural, and that will certainly remain. Next. Privacy will actually be improved with the boathouse. It'll actually provide a bit of a screen and I suppose a sound barrier to anybody to the south. Also, my clients won't have to look at the that high boathouse lift. And it's a peaked roof, so it's not going to have a sun deck on top. Next. And the boathouse will not impede the view of the neighbor as defined in the official plan. And again, it is on an existing dock. Next. And I noted the shallow water in the photo, so the dock's in the best location. There was always intent to have a boathouse on this particular dock, and that's why it was configured the way it was. It wasn't built over the years because of medical issues. My clients, both of them, are cancer survivors, and they also had the tragedy of their cottage burning down as well. So unfortunately, the boathouse didn't get built on the docks, and then the zoning bylaw changed in the meantime. Next. The 29-foot width, we tried to work with that as best we could, and really that's an absolute minimum for a 2-slip boathouse with having interior slips. Again, it's only a 7% increase in the width. I know some people used to have kind of that rule of thumb with minor variances. If it was under 10%, well, that's minor, and I know you can't go by numbers, but I'm just trying to point out that it's just a small increase in width. And the shape of the shoreline basically puts the boathouse in the best location it can be on the property. Next. Again, I think the appearance of the boathouse, it is attractive. There are a number of neighbors in support. Now I have 9 here. We'd anticipated a couple more that unfortunately didn't come in, but there are 7 letters of support. The one objector is on actually the opposite side of the far side of Roberts Bay, and I question the impact there. In my opinion, it represents good planning. It's on an existing dock. Privacy will actually be enhanced. Next. And the ingress and egress isn't changing. Roof is a peaked roof, limited visual impact. And again, the dock was certainly intended to have a boathouse on it. It just never happened, unfortunately. So I'm here to answer any questions, and I'm in committee's hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fauner. Anyone else care to speak in favor? Oh, the owner is here. Great. Okay, let's bring them in. Mr. Vanderwall, can you hear me? Yep.
How do we do this? I think something's going wrong here.
I can hear you. I just can't see you.
Oh. How do you do that? I'm not the smartest guy.
You might see a video, a little video camera somewhere.
Yeah. There we are.
There you are. All right, please take it away. And could you just give us your name and address before you?
It's Hans Vanderwallen. Address is 145 Birchmount Street, London, Ontario. But I think Steve Fauner, he knows it all. Like, not too much to say. I don't know if there's any.
Okay, well then if you're good with that, just stay on in case anybody from our committee has any questions of either one of you.
Good work. Thank you.
Okay. Now, is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this application? Anyone, Jane? No. Okay, great. So I'm going to turn it back to committee then. And committee, do we have any questions or comments at all? Mayor Harding.
Thank you. I'm in support of this, but Mr. Fauner pointed it out, but I'll just also point out to committee again, as we get into a boat lift discussion, have a good look at the boat lift and why it was egregious at the time, and it still remains egregious at this point. So I'm happy a boathouse is going up and he doesn't have to look at it.
Somehow I knew you'd say that, but anyway, okay, so I don't, Counselor Jaglowitz?
Thank you, Chair. I just have one question. I understand the reason for the exemption for the length because of the shallow water. I was just wondering the logic for the exemption on the width.
Mr. Fawner, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, for exemption firstly, there's no exemption applied for the length. That's not in this application. The length does comply out into the water. So it is within the maximum 50 feet. You can extend out in the water. In terms of the width, in fact, to have a two-slip boathouse, I think if you talk to most builders, I think a lot of them design them to 32 foot or 34 foot in width. We tried to get that down as small as we could. We couldn't get it below 29 feet. You know, you have to talk about safety between slips and widths of docks. This was the absolute minimum we could get it down to. And again, I felt that the impact of the additional 2 feet in width would be minimal. So I did agree to take it forward. I certainly wouldn't want to see it go any larger. This was the minimum we could do for a two-slip boathouse.
Actually, thank you for that answer. And I apologize. I was looking ahead to the next application, and that's so therefore I'm in support of this.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I have a 30 feet in my boathouse, and based on safety, I wouldn't want it any less width than that. All right, so anybody else have any comments? All right, then I'm going to read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved that Planning Committee recommend to Township Council that ZBA-24/20 bylaw 2020-119 Vanderwall roll number 4-5-063 be approved. Any comments, any discussion? All in favor? Yep, carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go back now to our delegations. They were invited for 9:45. So Jane, maybe if you can start letting them in, that would be great. Have you got Mr. Crocker there? Okay. There he is. Welcome, Mr. Crocker. If you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Great.
And see if I can put
There
myself
you
on
go.
the screen.
You're there. All right.
Okay.
Okay, please go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you and good morning. First, I'd like to thank David Pink and the Planning Committee for inviting us to talk about our lake plan this morning. I should be joined by Deirdre Brode, who is with me here today, representing Skeleton Lake Cottagers Organization. Deirdre is our Director of Stewardship and just recently joined our board to take on what is frankly a very large portfolio in a somewhat challenging time. The SLCO was officially incorporated in 1989, and we've been very active in the community ever since. I've been on the board since 2008 and was involved with the initial development of the lake plan. Now, I think we had some slides, but I'm not sure if they're popping up or not. Okay, there's that beautiful picture of Skeleton Lake. Let me just come back here. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about Skeleton Lake. Skeleton Lake's unique in many ways. For one, it was formed by a meteorite strike, and beneath its irregular shape is a pretty perfect 200-foot deep, nearly round crater. Because of that, it's got a relatively small watershed compared to other lakes, and it's mostly fed by underground aquifers. As a result, it's low in phosphorus and one of a handful of what's known as ultra-oligotrophic lakes in Canada, and is actually very ultra crystal clear. It also straddles two townships, for those that may not know, but Skeleton Lake is 2/3 in the township of Muskoka Lakes and 1/3 in the township of Huntsville. And because of that, I like to joke our little lake association has twice the amount of work to do than most others. But I do think that all lakes in Muskoka are unique in their own way and have their own unique sets of issues and problems. And I want to applaud the township for taking this initiative to recognize that uniqueness by including individual lake plans into the new official plan. And I'd also like to thank the committee and David for directing that our lake plan be forwarded onto the official plan consulting group at this stage. Next slide, please. So we embarked on our lake plan project in 2008. In 2014, we produced the Skeleton Lake Plan and Stewardship Program. We first presented our lake plan to Township Council in 2015, and again at the outset of the official plan review in August of 2019. I'd like to talk a little bit about how we got there, because I think it's important to know that we followed a very rigorous process of engagement with the community to make sure that our plan was credible and accurately reflected the wishes of the community. We first started serious work on it in 2009 by designing a survey that would go out to all property owners in the watershed, not just the paid up members of Skeleton Lake Cottages organization. And that turned out to be about 1,000 property owners. Our questionnaire covered a lot of things, such as values, features, perceived changes, and vision. We put a lot of effort into that questionnaire and that survey to make sure that it was well balanced and unbiased. I will say one of the biggest challenges we had was creating a contact database. We had to go to both townships and manually transcribe the mailing addresses from the tax rolls for all of those. It was tedious work. The survey generated a very healthy response, I think, as David reported in his write-up, a very healthy response rate. And we proceeded to tabulate the data, host a bunch of workshops, and produce something we call a sense of place. And I think maybe the best way to describe that is that it's not unlike the policy directions document that's been produced recently for the new official plan. Our sense of place document was approved by our members at the 2011 AGM, and over the next 3 years, through a series of more focus groups, more workshops and interviews, and a lot of hard work, we finally arrived at our final document. And that was approved by our members in 2014. So our lake plan is about 6 years old now. I think that, and I just want to make this comment, I think that as we contemplate including lake plans into the new official plan, lake associations need to be able to demonstrate that they followed a rigorous process that was inclusive of the entire community. And I think David's touched on that in his report. So what's in our lake plan and stewardship program? As the name says, there are two parts. The lake plan itself is all about the strategic direction and initiatives that we have to take to make sure that the lake and the characteristics that we cherish so much about it are well preserved into the future. And this is where a lot of the policy-like actions and recommendations are contained. The stewardship program itself is more about shaping behaviors of the community in environmentally friendly activities and creating environmental awareness about certain things that we think will be helpful to the preservation of the lake. Taken together, these two parts of our lake plan give us a mandate for the work of the SLCO. In a sense, for the board of the SLCO, that makes it pretty easy because our mission is laid out for us. However, we're finding it's a tall order to tackle, especially as a volunteer organization. So there's a lot of work to do. Next slide, please. And I think the final slide. So there's a lot in our lake plan. And I think David has captured some of it, most of the salient points in his report. Specifically, as we pointed out in 2019, we want the committee to consider the following matters that we believe need to be included or pulled out in the new official plan. And that revolves around harmonizing policies and regulations between the township of Muskoka Lakes and the town of Huntsville. And that would be around things like frontage, lot occupation, and setbacks and things. We're also looking to protect our water by prohibiting land uses such as waste disposal, commercial and industrial storage of fuels, and other sort of industrial uses. We want to have further protection of our shoreline and to recognize that the shoreline of the lake as a Muskoka heritage area due to its unique geological history and cultural landscape that was resulted from the origins as a meteorite crater. And then we'd like to recognize certain natural and cultural heritage features within the watershed by including additional mapping of such features in the official plan, and to protect the inflowing streams that feed the lake and all the wetlands and watersheds that contribute to the lake's ultra-oligotrophic nature and exceptionally low concentrations of phosphorus. So with that, I'll just conclude by saying, we are very pleased to be at this stage and recognize that our lake plan is ready to be moved forward in the next stage of the official plan and to be included in the official plan. We understand that we might have a bit of work to do in order to make sure that the policy recommendations in our lake plan are mapped onto the templates that are contained in the current official plan, and we're working on that as we speak. And we look forward to continue our work with the town and the consultants on completing this exercise. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, guess what? I just muted myself. All right, here we go. Thank you. That was a great presentation, Mr. Crocker. And I'm going to ask if anybody on the committee would have any comments or questions. Well, I think that was very clear, and thank you very much for that. Oh, I see you, Mayor Harding. Sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure there was just a note in the question and answer. I'm not sure whether people realize that. I want to provide this comment, I think for context, that this individual commented that their residents of Scotland Lake strongly agree with staff's recommendations in the report re-notification of public meetings. Secondly, they would also ask for some clarity, township's official policy on a specific number of metrics in the official plan. Understand generally more suitable in a zoning bylaw. And that was their comment. I'm not sure whether staff want to comment on that. You can read this specific question and answer, but I thought it should come up in the public meeting.
Thank you very much. Just one moment, please. Okay, so I'm going to let Mr. Pink respond to that.
Good morning, committee and members of the public. Thank you. Through the chair, I just did read that question and answer as well. Didn't introduce the report, but can quickly, before the additional delegations. I think as committee members are aware, our official plan has strongly encouraged the development of lake plans since it was passed around 2007, 2008. And somewhat surprisingly, we haven't really received many proposals come forward since that time, but thankful Skelton Lake, Little Long Lake and 3 Mile Lake have, and have done up a brief report for committee that outlines their salient points and suggests that they be forwarded to the consulting team for consideration into the first draft of our new official plan. Probably the only thing I would note, would concur with the comments that were received that the mayor just read out. There are some benefits to going through a more site-specific proposal, in that there's more pointed notification and there's more concentration on some of the impacts and issues that are raised in those proposals. Sometimes when you do a comprehensive review of an entire document, like an official plan or a zoning bylaw, sometimes some of the issues don't come to the forefront or are not noticed, and they don't receive the amount of debate and discussion that perhaps they should. With that noted, though, I would commend all three lake plans that have come forward with the amount of outreach they've done. I've encouraged them through those processes to engage with their communities and document that, and I think they all have, and you've heard that from the presentation today from Skelton Lake, and I think you'll hear that from the next two as well. There's always a bit of a debate on the last point with respect to some of the finer details proposed in the lake plan. There's always a debate in planning circles. Most planners prefer to keep official plans very high level and keep numbers out. However, I've seen in my time also a desire amongst councils and in the community to have more specifics so that it's very clear when zoning bylaws are drafted and future LPAT hearings as to what council's vision was in that official plan. So I think you do see in the three lake plans some details that are typically included in a zoning bylaw that have been brought forward. There's nothing certainly inappropriate with that other than I think the concern that council needs to be aware of and the residents on the lake, if those details are embedded in the official plan and someone wanted to exceed them, you may be into an official plan amendment for something that currently would go through perhaps a minor variance or a zoning amendment. So just something to think about when you desire those specifics to be nailed down. It really hinders any flexibility going forward with future development proposals. So there's pros and cons to that. Hopefully that helps. And without further ado, there are two other delegates who are here today that want to present their lake plans. And lastly, I would just commend all the effort that was put in by those associations. I do know it's a lot of work. I've been working with a lot of them over the years on their plans, and commend them for the excellent products that they produced.
Okay, and I see one more question from Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, keeping it on a high level as we are here. I guess to David more than anything, as our official planner, as our sort of figurehead in that regard. When I see Skeleton Lake and I see some come forward and then others don't, and I certainly commend those that spend the time and effort to do what they've done in terms of the plans. What do you as a planner, with all others, I guess, who don't come forward, who don't take or create the opportunity to do so, and or even within the associations themselves, let's take Skeleton Lake. So 1,000 people responded. Do we look at, how many actual properties are on Skeleton Lake? And we know that there's 2,486. And so this is a voice, but it's not the voice of everyone on that lake. How do you settle with that in terms of in your position?
Mr. Pink?
Thank you. I would note, I guess maybe from the onset, I think you commented that many lakes didn't come forward. I am aware of other lake associations that are diligently working and likely will come forward in the future. And as we know, official plans are living documents and they can come forward at later time and incorporate. So that's certainly possible. When it comes to notification, certainly I can see on one hand, one would think if there's over 2,000 residents on a lake and only 1,000 responses, one would think perhaps that's a low response rate. In my experience with planning matters, that's actually a pretty good response rate. It is a challenge in planning circles to get people engaged at a high level planning discussion. Unfortunately, what I find is when an applicant makes a minor variance and it impacts that immediate neighbor, at that point, they certainly get engaged in the planning process. And sometimes I wish they would at this stage because it can set that broader vision and avoid those disputes down the road, hopefully. But I would say, 1,000 responses or 1,000 people generally in support on a lake of around 2,000 is a pretty acceptable threshold to reach.
Thank you, Mr. Pink. All right, thank you. Oh, Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you. And that through the chair, just a comment. And I will comment on all 3 lake plans, but so I don't have to come up on each one. But, you know, I really commend all the residents for taking the time to do a lake plan. It sure helps us when we're making actual decisions. And as far as I'm concerned, 1,000 people answering it is incredible. And to all of you are to be commended for your hard work. And that's why we should be maybe listening. And to Councillor Zavitz on that, if you take all 10 councillors, sometimes only 6 put something through. So it's just a case of that just shows that people are interested, and I would support them 100%. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Crocker, Miss Browd. And we're going to move on now to Susan Walker. Well, that's probably it. We'll find out soon. Okay, it's William Walker, but I'm going to guess that's Susan who we're going to be talking to.
Yes, okay. It is Susan Walker. I am the past president of 3 Mile Lake Association. I've been on the board of directors since 2015. 3 years ago, I began revising the 2013 lake plan with Rob Tanner, who was then the past president. Rob Tanner is also the person who was largely responsible for producing our original lake plan in 2013. I'm not here today to make any formal submissions, but I'm available to answer questions that you might have. And I would also like to thank David Pink for his guidance throughout the process. He was very helpful to us.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Walker. Besides the fact that I think this will apply to you, to thank you for your great work and your community work, and I think all councillors would like to say that to you. But now, do I have any questions, concerns, comments from anybody? I think we're good. So thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Okay, and so now, Jane, I think we will be moving to Mr. McKenna. So can you hear me, Mr. McKenna? If you can turn your video on.
Share screen?
No, just your video. There you are. Okay, so welcome. This is for Little Long Lake, and please take it away.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the committee for meeting with me today, and especially David Pink, who's been really helpful in guiding us in this journey. This is our first lake plan, and I headed up as the chair of the Lake Plan Committee. Our committee spent the best part of a year working on our lake plan. It's based on an online survey where 89% of cottage owners and 17% of vacant cottage lot owners participated, and they expressed their concerns and wishes. And we've been sharing through newsletters and through approvals the lake plan that we're presenting today. We also sought and have included evaluations from experts who identify the environmental challenges and the ecological threats that our small lake is facing. So let me introduce you to our lake. Tucked to the west side of that large, beautiful skeleton lake is Little Long Lake, a very small and narrow 16-hectare lake with a mean water depth of only 4 meters. Now, I didn't know you had the slide thing, so I'm going to do my sort of slide thing here this way. I don't know if you can see it. Now, is this coming? Yeah, there we go. as you can see, this map shows the distribution of lots. As you can see, only the lower half of the lake is developed. That's where 28 cottagers are close together and where they all share less than 8 hectares of lakefront water in front of their cottages. Our recreational carrying capacity is 0.12 hectares, of course, compared to the minimum of 1.6 hectares, which is the minimum scale for RCC. And the 0.12 hectares is the lowest of any developed lake in the township. And so that indicates, based upon the RCC model, that our lake is 13 times overdeveloped. So understandably, in our survey, 96% of cottagers in our online survey are extremely concerned about overdevelopment. Another important feature is Little Long Lake is the only known developed lake in the township that is sustained by a precarious, massive beaver dam that is 84 feet long. Let me get this going here. Okay. Should have gone for the slide option. 84 feet long and 9 feet tall. If this dam goes, so does the lake. 100% of the survey respondents indicated the well-being of the beaver colony as well as the dam are extremely important. Now, we reached out and 5 beaver scholars in our lake plan indicated that continued development with the clearing of lots, the loss of resources, the increased motorboat activity, and more dogs could cause the beaver to abandon the lake, leaving behind an unattended, derelict dam that could easily fail. The consequences of a dam failure are disastrous. Not only the loss of the lake, and at least a 40% drop in property values and massive destructive downstream. Here's a look at the trajectory. Whoops. Here we go. Here's a look at the trajectory of a catastrophic flooding and extensive destruction to people, property, and infrastructure downstream in the village of Bent River, including, as you can see, Highway 141 and even Watt Public School with a dam failure. So the consequences are quite dire. Little Long Lake is unique and a highly vulnerable lake because it is a closed basin lake. It's not fed by any freshwater streams. It's an enclosed ecosystem entirely dependent on precipitation. It has very old, long resident, possibly ancient glacial water that makes the lake highly susceptible to any man-made disruptions. It would take many years, if ever, for the lake to recover from a polluting event. We've also learned that it's a very rare meromictic lake. There are only 10 in Canada, 5 in Ontario, that has layers of water that do not intermix below a depth of about 4 meters. The lack of intermixing of lake waters allows almost no oxygen to reach the deepest layers of the lake, so it becomes stagnant and depleted of oxygen. The lack of circulation is the most critical aspect of the lake in terms of potential impacts from lakeshore development. Geologist Randall Hall, 2 hydrogeologists, Don Ford and Chris Helmer, and Professor Dr. Barry Warner, who's an eminent authority on wetland ecology and paleoecology, agree that Little Long Lake faces significant ecological threats because of these 2 compelling incidents, being both a closed basin lake and also a meromictic lake. These experts strongly advise against any further development. I should mention here that none of the scientists, the scholars, or the specialists that were hired by us, nor did they receive any compensation for proffering their professional opinions. So in closing, let me just say this. Little Long Lake property owners are very, very invested in the welfare, preservation, and protection of their tiny, very at-risk lake. 78% of cottagers voted in the 2018 township election, which I believe is the highest number of any voter turnout of any of the lakes in Muskoka Township. 89% participated in the online survey, and for many years, they've been actively involved in the Lake Partnership Program, demonstrating good stewardship of the lake. And we don't have very many requests, but here are our requests. Limit dock length to 40 feet on our narrow lake. Of course, the standard is 66, but because our lake is so narrow, if they were 66 feet in the narrows, they could go to the end of the dock and shake hands with each other. So 40 feet is what we would recommend in our narrow lake. And of course, the prohibition of construction of boathouses. The lake is just far too small. But here are two very essential and important requests that we have. A proactive monitoring program. We're proposing to the township to work in association with the Muskoka Watershed Council and inviting the NRF and/or Fisheries and Oceans Canada to join us in the monitoring of the enormous beaver dam, not only for the protection and preservation of the lake and in the interest of tax-paying property owners, but also in the mitigation of a very, very costly disaster the township could face with a breach of the dam. And lastly, we were looking for an ordinance or a special designation for Little Long Lake, one that will effectively protect our small, highly susceptible, closed basin and also Merrimatic Lake that has problematic water issues. The scientists have cautioned us that any further development would result in irreparable damage to the lake. And that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. McKenna. And sometimes the manual slideshow works just as well as the high-tech one. So,
I'm just trying to figure out the screen. You know, look at the
no, it was good. So, all right. Great presentation again. And do any councillors have any comments? Councillor Mazan?
Thank you. It's really more just a comment, and it's maybe the bookend to what Councillor Edwards was saying. I just wanted to compliment Jim in particular, who has taken a real leadership role in his lake. And I think during the election was the first time we met Jim on the end of your dock. And, you know, since then, he has really just taken this plan and brought it to this point. And I just wanted to say thank you for that time and effort. I actually found your lake plan to be quite easy to read, and the video of the beaver dam and watching that water breaching over was really, really just well done. So just thank you for putting that time and effort in.
Thank you. Of course, we don't have the resources that the bigger lakes have. And so we had to, you know, pretty well focus on our lake plan. And we were just really happy with the amount of participation by the people on the lake. And they've always been, whether it's been voting or the, you know, anything that we've done on the lake, everybody's been very, very much involved. And as I said, we've kept them very much involved with newsletters that we've been sending out. And of course, the lake plan was shared with them and approved by them.
Well, your efforts are noted. And I think one thing, unfortunately, we didn't see today a presentation in as much detail from 3 Mile Lake, but just that each lake does have its own personality. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I'm enjoying through all the hard efforts, reading through Skeleton Lake, yours, 3 Mile Lake. Every lake has its personality and its history and its makeup. So your time and effort just is noted. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things we wanted to do, rather than just bring our wishes to you, is we spent a considerable amount of time, at least I did, reaching out to experts, because otherwise these are just emotional requests that we have. Could you do this? Could you do that? So we brought in scientists and people to give you something to look at, something that substantiates the lake. We learned about the uniqueness of the lake being closed basin and also being a Merrimatic Lake. There are only 5 in Ontario. And so it really is better than just saying, could you please, you know, take a look at this? So we felt that by involving scientists and people who could give you, you know, independent information would help you formulate anything, any ordinances or any considerations that you may want to undertake.
Okay, Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Very interesting. Some of this a couple of years ago would have boggled my mind as far as the science behind everything. But then I get weekly updates from the paleontologists out there. It's very, very interesting that there are a lot of tools that are available to our lakes associations, and a lot of people doing work that perhaps our municipality is not aware of. in fact, even right down to the change in the insect pattern and how that affects a lake. And it gets very, very detailed, and at least at this point, I have someone to translate it for me. But I do look forward to showing, there's one study that is being done right now that happens to be one senior scientist that resides in Muskoka, or doesn't reside in Muskoka, but was from Muskoka. And then the junior end of it happens to be my kid, but it's really, really exciting, the research they're doing that will affect the discussions that come out of Lakes of Muskoka in a broader thing. So I think that there's a lot more that we could be doing to educate ourselves, for sure. And I look forward to bringing some of that information forward and seeing how folks, Georgian Bay Biosphere as well, if you start following some of the things that they're doing, is very, very educational. And I would say that's also the things that we should be trying to encourage other lake associations to, again, follow what others are doing and their efforts. And it all comes out to the same data, quite honestly, and the effects. So thank you.
One thing I might mention, because we talked about the monitoring of the lake, and I know that's a very interesting and new type of initiative, but we were able to find, for instance, actually right in Muskoka, Howard Smith, who's the managing director of the Aspen Valley Wildlife Sanctuary. I believe he's retired now, but he has a master's degree with specialization in wildlife behavior and management, and a Bachelor of Science degree honors with a specialization in zoology. Previously, he was with the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources in special capacities, notably as a senior biologist dealing with wildlife, and he was chair of the MNRF's Wildlife Animal Care Committee. And we actually had him over to the lake. So, you know, if we were going to be doing any mitigation in terms of checking the dam out and for the township as well as for us, he might be, for instance, a person who would be able to, and is qualified to do that, to see the activity of the beaver and the status of the dam. So, I mean, you don't have to, you know, go far and wide to find experts that, you know, could do this once a year, twice a year, or whatever. But it would be a mitigation effort to assure the township of this 84-foot long and 9-foot tall dam that is, you know, potentially a great threat to the township in terms of any destruction with a failure.
Okay. Why have I got an echo going here? We're good? Why do I? Sorry, guys. I can hear the echo.
Cheryl.
Do you have your mic on, David?
Earl Mortimer's mic is on.
Ah. Okay, are we good now? Oh, okay. That's okay. It's usually me, so that's fine. Okay, so that's great. And I must also comment on all of the comments to you, Mr. Pink, and all of your help that you're giving to these lake plans. And we're so appreciative of that. I know it's in your heart, but thank you very much for that. So, okay, we're going to move on to our next. Oh, there is. Oh, I didn't think we'd do that till we to Jen, but that's okay. We've already, yeah. Okay. So we've already done all the discussion, so we won't have to move to this in the agenda. I'm going to read a motion. Be it resolved that, well, okay, Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just before you go on, I just wanted to make a general comment on this. Councillor Edwards and Councillor Mazan and myself have really been promoting the small lakes in our ward to do this. And all four, Leonard Lake will come in real soon. They've been working with Director Pink with their lake plan. But what I'm saying is that we're only hearing from Ward B, a lake plan. So I encourage my peers to reach out to their lakes and make them aware that they have this one-time opportunity without cost to get their lake plan into our official plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'm going to ask Mr. Pink, because I was speaking with someone who is developing a lake plan or wants to start to, and not sure it can be done in time for the new official plan at the no cost level. Would you mind commenting on that?
Thank you, Chair Bridgman. I think it's not uncommon, and I might have noted that in the report, that lake associations or other entities will approach the municipality during zoning bylaw reviews or official plan reviews in order to gain approvals without having to go through the typical process. That's not uncommon, but there's nothing preventing a lake association from coming forward at any time. We don't have to be going through an official plan review to embed their lake plan in an official plan. Yes, they should then submit and fill out an official plan amendment application form. There is a fee in the tariff of fee bylaw, but what I've typically advised most is that if they request council to waive that, I suspect that council would be somewhat receptive to that request. But ultimately, it would be up to council to waive that fee. But hopefully there wouldn't be a cost burden on lake associations for doing that. But they do then have to fill out a form. And as I indicated earlier, then go through a public meeting that's specifically focused on their lake plan as opposed to the official plan in entirety. So there's a difference there too.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you very much, and through the chair. I think anyone that's a volunteer that does all the hard work that they do shouldn't have to pay for a lake plan, and I would be prepared to waive them the costs at that time. If we have to hire experts or consultants on that, it costs us much more than that. So I think we should maybe look at that. Anyone coming in with a lake plan, whether now or later, it should be waived. I have talked to the president of the 3 Mile Lake Association. I know they were concerned about the cost at that time, and I think that's something we should look at in the future. Thank you.
I suspect that everybody would be very receptive to that, Councillor Edwards. Okay, I'm going to read this motion, moved by Councillor Jaglowitz, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved, the Planning Committee recommend to Council that the lake plans received of Skeleton Lake, Little Long Lake, and 3 Mile Lake be forwarded to the official plan review consulting team for consideration and inclusion in phase 4, which would be the draft official plan of the official plan review process. Any comments? All in favor? That's unanimous, I believe, Madam Clerk. Carried. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to Trina Clark, and she is going to speak to us about item 7A. Sorry? Oh, okay, sorry. Caitlin, could you please, okay, we're moving on to 7A. Sorry, guys, it's a little confusing here. 7A, which is the Muskoka Greenscaping Tree Service. And so Caitlin, could you, there you are. Ms. Walker, could you please take us through it?
No problem. Thank you, Chair Bridgman. The next application to be heard is a site plan agreement. It's 59-20 in the name of Muskoka Greenscaping Tree Service. The subject property is known municipally as 1203 Everly Road. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plan on page 237 of the agenda package. The site plan agreement application has been submitted to permit the construction of a 2,880 square foot dryland marina building. The following comments were received from Tim Sopko, the township's public works technician. And the comments were that the entrance should be reconfigured to be perpendicular to the center line of the road, and that the additional wording be added to the site plan agreement that explicitly requires the ongoing maintenance of stormwater management facilities. A letter was also received from Fred and Susan Nicholson opposing the proposed development. I believe committee has had an opportunity to review this submission, but if not, I would be happy to read it in full. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration. Staff are recommending that the application be approved subject to the following conditions. That one, the entrance be reconfigured to be perpendicular to the center line of the road, and that any required changes be made to the stormwater management plan and the receipt of securities for stormwater management. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer questions from committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. And do we have the applicant or applicant's agent? Okay. Who is it, Jane? Okay, we're just waiting for Ms. Clark. She is?
Yeah, I'm on there. I should be.
I can't see her. We can't hear you if you're here, Ms. Clark.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, there you are. No, not very well.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Much better, thank you.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
It's not very good. So my name is Trina Clark and I'm here from T Squared Design Studio, 160 Medora Street, Port Carling, Ontario, P0B1J0. Our client wishes to construct a steel boat storage and service structure on their vacant property. As per the staff report, they're adhering to all of the zoning bylaw provisions in terms of usage, setbacks, lot coverage, and height. And the property is very well treed, providing a great visual and audible buffer to the neighboring properties. Our client has also proposed the location of the structure to be far enough back from the road to ensure that it won't be visible from the road. They wish to maintain the natural environment as much as possible. They're also willing to reconfigure the driveway as requested to create a safer entrance by widening the mouth of the driveway and making it as perpendicular to the road as much as possible. With this, blasting will be required on the left side of the driveway, and without disturbing too much of the land, we're able to remove approximately 20 to 30 feet back from the road of rock. If they're required to go back any further, they will be causing a large disturbance to the natural environment, which is something that is not desirable to anybody. They've also agreed to the stormwater management securities and have budgeted between $7,500 and $9,000 for the plunge basin and silt fencing that has been recommended by Pinestone Engineering. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on behalf of this application? Oh, thank you. Okay. All right, committee. Do we have any questions? Comments? No? Okay. I'm going to read the motion then. Moved by Councillor Hayes, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that Planning Committee recommend to Township Council that site plan application SPA-59/20 Muskoka Greenscaping Tree Service Limited, roll number 6-24-069, be approved subject to the following conditions. 1, that the entrance be reconfigured to be perpendicular to the center line of the road and any required changes be made to the stormwater management plan. 2, the receipt of securities for stormwater management. If a corresponding site plan agreement has not been executed by January 13th, 2022, this approval will have been deemed to have expired. Any comments? Councillor Jaglowitz.
Yes, thank you. It's just a technicality, Chair Bridgman. I'm looking at the email that came in from Fred Nicholson, which was referenced, and I see it's addressed to TML public comment at muskokalakes.com. Is that not the official site for someone to make a comment? And if it is, I wonder if it shouldn't have been dealt with. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I'm not quite sure. It's planning. The comments come into planning, not
I see. So
TML.
they've addressed it incorrectly. Is that?
I believe so.
Well, then maybe I could just ask that maybe they ask a question of why they weren't notified. I just wondered if staff might reach out to them after the meeting and explain what happened or something like that. Thank you.
Okay,
This was received on TML, but I circulated.
it was circulated to, this was circulated to everyone yesterday. So even though it came in under the other address, we made sure it made planning committee. It's just not the designated address. Oh, right. Okay, so I think we're good with the address, and take that under note, Councillor Jaglowitz, and we'll have a look at that. So any other comments? All in favor? I think that's unanimous.
Sorry, I was just checking that email.
Yeah, no kidding. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Just a comfort break, and we'll be back at 18 minutes to 11.
Somebody's mic's still on.
I think it's Ruth's.
Actually, Mayor Harding.
I'm frozen.
Can you hear me, Phil?
I can now.
I have to go. Apparently, I have a problem at a job site. So if you could please pass.
Okay, we'll pass that on. And I think Cheryl's listening right now as well. So thank you.
Hello, Susan. Okay. Thank you. I think I'm muted. Just a second.
If everybody could come back, we get our quorum going again.
I fall asleep. I like you.
Okay, I think we certainly have quorum if we don't have quite everybody here. I think we have everybody here. Okay, so I apologize. I missed one of our zoning bylaws. That is Jeffrey this morning. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now. And Mr. Sharp, I believe this is yours again. If you're there, maybe I better make sure you're back first.
Thank you, Chair
Great.
Bridgman. The next application to be
I
heard
can't
is
hear
zoning
you,
bylaw.
Bryce. Oh, that's because I've got mine off. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Bridgman. The next application to be heard is zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA-25/20 in the name of Jeffrey. The subject property is known municipally as 152 Island Tobins, Unit R60. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plans and drawings beginning on page 164 of the agenda package. The purpose and effect of the application is summarized as follows. An existing dock is proposed to be enlarged and a new single-story boathouse with a peaked roof is proposed to be constructed. Bylaw 2020-120 will permit the proposed dock to be 96 feet in length, whereas the maximum permitted length is 66 feet. Bylaw 2020-120 will also permit the single-story boathouse to be 94 feet in length, whereas the maximum permitted length is 50 feet. Notice of this public meeting under the Planning Act was circulated 23 days in advance, and 3 submissions have been received to date. The first submission is by the District Municipality of Muskoka's Planning and Economic Development Department. In summary, district staff would not be opposed to the approval of the application, provided the appropriate development control techniques are utilized to implement the recommendations of the fish habitat assessment undertaken by Beacon Environmental. That is signed by Cassidy Fiore, district planner. The second submission is by Nick Snyder, the township's chief building official, and Mr. Snyder has no Ontario Building Code objections. The third submission is by the township's Public Works Department, and the department has no objections. I have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration. Staff have no objections, subject to a requirement for a site plan agreement to implement the recommendations of the fish habitat assessment prepared by Beacon Environmental and to revegetate the shoreline buffer of the property. I have no further comments to make at this time, and I would be happy to assist committee with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp, and I believe we have Mr. Fawner. Okay, Mr. Fawner, I apologize for missing this in the beginning. You're spending more of your birthday with us than you probably wanted to, but please take it away.
No, first I'd have to say, no, very interesting conversations regarding lake plans, and it's great to see them coming along, and I'm sure that David's done a great job in assisting with that. So they've been a long time coming, so that's great to see. Steve Fawner, once again, Northern Vision Planning Limited. I'm here representing, in this particular application, Mr. Del Jeffrey, who owns property on the east side of Tobin's Island. Excuse me. Again, the staff report was positive. I appreciate that. We are dealing with a shallow water concern, which is fairly pervasive along this section of Tobin's Island. I'm sure the mayor and others who are on the lake recognize this area, so it's definitely very shallow. I do have a PowerPoint presentation. If we could get to that, that'd be great. Thank you. Yeah, so the purpose is to construct a dock and boathouse out 96 and 94.5 feet respectively. This won't even get us to 2.5 feet of water depth. It's very close, but we won't quite be there, but it's the best we can do on the property. As we move out from shore, just because of the angle of the lot line, it actually pushes the boathouse out to the middle of the property and disturbs the view even more from my client's cottage. There is an existing dock that's there, and it is currently 86 feet from shore. Next. So if we have a look at the site plan here, and you'll see the positioning of the dwelling and the storage building. I think my next one has a bit of a zoom in on this, I think. Next. Yeah, so one thing I wanted to point out here is that, again, you can see the outline of the existing dock, and you'll see a dimension 88 foot 4 inches at the top there. That's out to the corner of the boathouse, and also actually happens to be the very corner of the dock there. So we're really not going out very much more than the current dock on the north end. It's just the nature of it happens to be slightly angled to the shoreline, that at the south end of it, we are out with the dock 96 feet. So I guess depending on how you look at it, I guess looking at it positively, I would suggest that we're not going out much further than what is existing. Next. This is the layout of the two-slip boathouse and side dock. Next. And this is the elevation that would be seen from the water, and certainly given the roof line, this is a very minimalistic roof line, if you will, for a single-story boathouse. It is peaked roof, not a flat roof with a deck. Next. So this is seeing it as we're coming into the property. This is out fairly far. That raft is out about 200 feet from shore, and it's only about 4 feet deep there, 4 to 5 feet deep. Next. This is in a little closer, seeing the existing dock that's there. That boat lift will be removed, will not be necessary once, or there could be a lift, but it would be inside the boathouse. It won't be external if this boathouse is approved and gets built. Next. This is the very shallow water you can see in this area. This is some emergent vegetation. This is where there is some type 1 fish habitat as found by Beacon, but where the proposed boathouse location is going to be is definitely type 2 fish habitat. Next. That's looking north. Now this is looking south. That boathouse there is 200 feet away, and that's the first neighbor immediately to the south. It doesn't look like it, but that boathouse itself is out about 80 feet. And again, certainly going by the shoreline, you'd never know that. And I also want you to note the curvature of the shoreline. You can see that is actually Dr. Luke's property, the next one. They're out on a bit of a point. And on the previous photo, you could see the point in the other direction. If you drew a line straight across, you're out 250, 300 feet before you get to that line. So we're well within what I would suggest is going to be we're tucked into the shoreline fairly well, even though I recognize we're putting the boathouse out more, but the shoreline itself creates a matter of that you're not going to see this perceptibly from the water out farther. Next. This is the current dock, existing dock, the way it exists today. Next. And this is the existing dwelling that exists on the site. Next. This is the view from the living room window of the cottage. Again, and the boathouse is going to be sort of to the right of the dock. If we were to go out any farther, it would actually be pushing the boathouse out more into the view of, well, this view, if you will. Is going to block a bit of it as it is, but it would be even worse if we went out farther. Next. This would be the location roughly of the proposed boathouse in this area. And again, we're only going out slightly farther than where you see the boat on the left with the teal cover. That's we're only going to be slightly farther out than that. Next. And this is just showing the shallow water. It was rather interesting when I was there doing the site visit. This was, I think, very early September. The waves that were coming in creates a lot of turbidity in the water, and it actually creeps out as the day goes on, and then it settles down overnight, according to my client, and then the next day more wave action and it gets very turbid. It just shows you how shallow it is, somewhat clay in the bottom of it, and but this area is a challenge because of it being so shallow. Next. Again, built form is to dominate, and domination really deals with the width of the proposed structures, and the boathouse is 13.5% wide where 16% is permitted, and the proposed dock is 21.4% wide where 25% is permitted. We've not gone to the maximum. We feel what we have proposed is appropriate. And again, as I mentioned, built form is really more dependent on width. Next. The increase in length as you're out from shore won't be perceptible. I'll be talking about certain navigation in a moment. Certainly there have been other approvals in the municipality to go to 2.5 feet of water depth. That's the standard. And you might be interested to know that the standard has been adopted by the town of Gravenhurst as well. And in fact, they've embedded it in their zoning bylaw and allows you to go out to 2.5 feet water depth in their zoning bylaw. One of my past approvals was in 2017 for a boathouse on Lake Joseph that went out 124 feet to get 2.5 feet of water. Next. Setbacks, as I noted initially from shoreline structures, is 200 feet. And it's 200 feet to the south, and it's over 200 feet to the north. It's about 250 feet to the north to the closest shoreline structure. It's a very attractive single-story design with a minimal amount of roof area. Next. Proposed lot coverage with this proposal is pretty modest. The property is not developed or overdeveloped at 5.3%. Current water depth is 27 inches at the end of the dock, so that's why we'd like to go out farther to get 30 inches. We can't even quite get it with what we've proposed. It is certainly shallow. And I think, again, if you looked on the navigation map, you'll see a huge shallow area in this location. Next. I mentioned the shape of the shoreline. It won't interfere with navigation because there are 2 green markers that are well offshore. They're probably 750 feet offshore, maybe even close to 1,000 feet offshore, and that keeps the navigation away from this part of the island. This was actually the first time for me that I've been in close to this area, and I've navigated north-south on Lake Rosso many, many times. And simply those green markers, you know it's shallow and you don't go anywhere near this area. Next. Fish habitat assessment was done. I mentioned that the boathouse will be located in type 2. I do believe that water access properties, boathouses are more of a necessity than they would be for mainland, just simply because you're bringing in your groceries and goods and supplies. And they're used a little bit more so maybe as storage slightly because of that. You don't have a garage on site, for example, in the case of a water access property so much. The neighbor to the south has indicated sort of a general agreement. I don't believe we have anything in writing except for an email that said that he would do anything he could to support the application, but we've not heard anything further. Next. Just wanted to note with the staff report, you know, my client has been planting trees, but unfortunately he's had little success. He's planted a number of pines. He's only had 2 that have survived. So, you know, he's sort of questioning about the planting of trees as a condition. You know, is it really germane to the application? And, you know, I tend to agree, but if it's, I must admit, if committee really feels comfortable and that should be done, you know, we can work something out, and I'm sure that my client will be willing to plant some trees. He's going to anyways. He's going to try a different species other than pine because they don't seem to survive. So, but anyways, just sort of questioning whether that's directly related to a boathouse application, the planting of trees. So, next. So just in conclusion, those are the things that I've mentioned about the depth of water is definitely an issue. Width complies. We're really not going out that much farther than the existing dock. We're talking a low lot coverage. The shoreline is concave so that boating public are out from this. Next. And fish habitat type 2. Distance between the neighbors here is extensive, which is very helpful. And again, I think the need for a boathouse on water access property is greater than for mainland properties. So I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and hopefully committee will see their way to an approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for this application? No. Anyone against, Jane? Nope. Okay, great. All right, I'm going to turn it over to committee then. Any comments, questions from anyone? Mayor Harding?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I guess, you know, my question, I look at the photos again from this area, you know, it's treed everywhere. Yes, there's some clearing that's probably been there for 20 years, 30 years. You know, are we wanting tree planting? What kind of planting from a natural vegetative buffer? And is it everything between the cottage? Do we want them to rip up his lawn? Trying to understand what we're trying to do in particular here. And anyway, I'm not just trying to understand.
So, Mr. Sharp, would you like to comment on that?
Thank you, Chair Bridgman. I appreciate Mr. Fauner's perspective and his opinion. In my view, in reviewing the application, you know, land-based buildings and structures aren't that well buffered from the lake. There are some trees in the front yard area, but there are some intermittent gaps, and there is a generally open front yard. And as I had indicated in my report, you know, shoreline structure length restrictions are as much about limiting built form as cumulative shoreline structure width requirements are. So I think what we're intending to do is recognizing the fact that these shoreline structures are going to be extending so far from shore, and that there would be a greater built form impact associated with that than shoreline structures tucked closer to shore, that it would be beneficial to have some plantings in the front yard area just to you know, again, improve the overall shoreline buffer. It would be an overall net improvement. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Edwards, I believe. Oh, Mayor Harding, excuse me, Mayor Harding, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, it's not really just a supplemental comment. I appreciate the fact that, you know, we're adding buffer. All we're doing is block somewhere between the boathouse and the cottage, adding buffer from a driving by. And again, no one goes anywhere near the inside of this bay. It is, as Mr. Fauner said, extremely shallow. Like I'm a kilometer away, and I think I've been in there twice, and only because I've been at Dr. Luke's place. It's just I'm not sure fully what we're trying to accomplish. And again, if it's better vegetation, I get that, but from a visual impact perspective, you're going to see a boathouse, and I think, you know, whether the boathouse is 80 feet, 60 feet, 50 feet from shore, no one's going to know the difference, and no one can actually look down the shore and see this boathouse sticking out. So I'm just cognizant of that, and I think sometimes we want to just have this cabin in the middle of the woods and a million trees all around it, and you know, we kind of get rid of some natural areas and some flat level areas, and a lot of Tobin's is quite flat. So I guess I'm not always in favor of the vegetative buffer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, I don't have a problem with tree plantings. We're trying to stop erosion and everything else like that. And that's why I would leave that in. What I am concerned about is when we're going out that distance, the width of 16 feet of the dock. Yes, it's allowed and everything else like that. But as you go out, maybe we should be taking some of that out. We're going out to allow boats in, not to move a party deck out on the water. And I don't know what everyone else thinks about that, but a 16-foot wide by 37, that gives about 592 square feet further out in the water. I don't know what the rest of the committee think, but it would be nice if some of that could be cut off.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, I think that at a future council meeting, we need to have a delegation from the district to talk about the ribbon of life. I think that many of us are forgetting we're not planting trees for humans. We're planting trees for the wildlife. And this is an example of grass that we don't want, or environmentalists and people that love the environment don't want grass to the waterfront. Planting trees, I've seen it happen. We asked them to plant trees. Well, if they spent as much money thinking about the vegetation as they do their large docks, then they'd have vegetation. What they need to do is to get back to natural vegetation. And natural vegetation will support the ribbon of life and the filtering that's required. So I think that's going to be the benefit, and I'm supporting that we need vegetation on this property because it is just clear cut right down to the water. I support Councillor Edwards. I think the size needs to be looked at the distance out in the water, and I'm uncomfortable with this applicant.
Okay, Mayor. Oh, Mr. Fauner, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Just the opportunity to respond a couple of things. Yeah, my heart is with you in terms of the shoreline vegetation. I guess my comment was related directly to, is that germane to the boathouse application? But anyways, I totally understand having treat buffer areas, certainly. I did want to comment on the size of the side dock, and yes, it is proposed to be 14 feet wide. The side dock that was just approved, though, for the Lane property, which is 2 or 3 properties to the north of here, was 18 feet or more, and that was given approval. So you might want to just keep that in mind. I understand the potential difficulty. I think with having a large dock over the water. In this case, I would remind you that we're looking at distances between property shoreline structures as 200 feet. That's certainly different than what you get in most cases. And again, I know that the Lane was a recent approval, and I believe the dock there was 18 feet wide, the side dock. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Harding.
Thanks. And again, I'm not opposed to tree planting, so please get me wrong. I'm always into net bettering a property, and I just saw some trees, and I just wanted to make sure that what we're building there are not necessarily, if we've got problems putting pine trees, then there's some kind of shrubs or whatever that does help along the water's edge. It's interesting, we talk about we want to naturalize the property, we want to get rid of the lawns, which means I have no sitting area, but yet when I have a small dock or a little 16-foot wide dock that I want to be able to sit on the waterfront and we want to get rid of that, where are people going to sit at the end of the day? And people want to be able to hang out and lounge by the water and sit by the water, and that is a unique characteristic of Muskoka. And just because there's something 16 feet wide, which is not overly wide in my opinion, does not necessarily mean it's a party and it's going to happen. It's within zoning bylaws and everything else. So again, I'm in favor of the application, and also I'll say, with vegetative buffer. So.
Okay, thank you. Minor comment on my part, because this faces east, I'm going to guess that after a certain point in the day, the only way they can have a seating area with sun will be on that dock. The rest would be in shade. And so that's just my thought, having the same thing. It becomes important. All right, anybody else have any comments? All right, then I'm going to read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Hayes, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that Planning Committee recommended Township Council that ZBA-25/20 bylaw 2020-120 Jeffrey roll number 4-28-071-01 be approved subject to site plan control. Any more discussion? All in favor? Think we have that unanimous? Yep, carried unanimously. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Fauner, go and enjoy the rest of your day. Okay, so now we are to, where am I? Muskoka Greenscaping, sorry? Okay, we're at 7B, which is again, Caitlin, I believe you're going to take us through this. Thank you.
That's correct. Thanks, Chair Bridgman. The next application to be heard is Site Plan Agreement 6820 in the name of 2705274 Ontario Limited. The subject property is known municipally as 1179 Everly Road. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plan on page 352 of the agenda package. A site plan agreement application has been submitted to permit the construction of a 3,268 square foot building. The proposed building will contain a light industrial use, specifically a woodworking shop. A 1,200 square foot accessory residential building is also being proposed. The following comments were received from Tim Sopko, the township's public works technician, that additional wording be added to the site plan agreement explicitly requiring the ongoing maintenance of stormwater management facilities. A letter was also received from Fred and Susan Nicholson opposing the proposed development. I believe committee has seen that letter. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration. Staff are recommending that the application be approved subject to the receipt of securities for stormwater management. I have no further comments at this time and I'm happy to answer any questions from committee. Thank you.
Thank you. We have I believe it's Ms. Owens. It's the agent on behalf of the applicant. There you are, Tracy. Okay, Ms. Owens, if you'd like to take it away.
Good morning. Thank you, Caitlin, for your summary. My name is Tracy Owen from the drawing board. Address is PO Box 248, Port Carling, Ontario, P0B1J0. And of course, I'm the agent for Mr. Clements, who is the owner of 2705274 Ontario, Inc. Mr. Clements is proposing a 2,800 square foot woodworking shop with a covered porch and future residence to the west of the shop building. The woodworking shop is located on a naturally level area approximately in the middle of the property, which has been cleared as shown in the photos in the report. It's a fairly long property at over 900 feet, and the woodworking shop would not be visible from Evely Road, as it's over more than 375 feet from the lot line and is well buffered by to the front, side, and rear by existing forested area. We've consulted with a septic designer and have verified an adequate location to the west of the shop as indicated on the site plan for a sewage system. We've also consulted with Kleinstone Engineering for stormwater management, and the plan does indicate that only a slight increase in stormwater flows And this would be mitigated by swales and utilizing the existing forest area as a natural filter strip. All proposed development would be in compliance with the township zoning bylaw. And of course, Mr. Clements is happy to comply with the planning requirements, including dark sky lighting and of course, securities for the stormwater management. We were not aware of any objections, but if there's anything that we can do to address the concerns, we'd be happy to consider those. And of course, I'm happy to answer any questions the Planning Committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Owen. Anyone else like to speak on behalf of this application? Jane, anyone opposed? No. Okay, great. Then I will ask committee questions, comments, anybody? Councillor Edwards?
Yes, I'm not opposed to it. I just have a quick question on page 306 with the lighting. And what I'm concerned about is we had another application when they had supposedly dark sky lighting, but there was lighting coming out from the top. And it says flood and uplighting with adjustable mounting accessories. And I just want to make sure there's no light going up in that. It's definitely dark sky to our bylaw.
Okay, Ms. Owen, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Edwards. I was actually viewing the planning committee that did come up with that uplight. This definitely would be just only down lighting for dark sky lighting. So absolutely, we'll make sure that is in compliance.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jaglowitz?
Thank you, Chair. And I apologize if this question is in the report. I didn't see it. I see there's a 1,200 square foot residential building on the property. I thought these were industrial lands. Maybe staff could just explain how that works for me. Thank you.
Ms. Walker, would you like to respond to that? Or Mr. Sharp? I see you've just lit up your screen. Mr. Sharp.
Through you, Chair Bridgman. The residential dwelling would be permitted in this case as an accessory use in building. So once the main use is established, that residential dwelling unit would be permitted as a right.
It's on page 297, Councillor Jaglowitz, if you are looking for a reference there.
I think just a supplementary, I see that, but and of course I'm not objecting to this because it's permitted, but that seems a bit strange, does it not? Like if you're in a residential zone, you're not permitted an accessory building with a industrial accessory building. So anyway, that's if it's permitted, it's permitted. Thank you.
Okay, you want to take your hand down, Councillor Jaglowitz? I assume you're finished. Okay, anybody else? All right, then I'm going to read this resolution. Moved by Councillor Hayes, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that Planning Committee recommend to Township Council that site plan application SPA-59/20 Muskoka Greenscaping Tree Service Limited. I got the wrong one.
Yeah. 7.
Excuse me, technically, just looking for the. Sorry, it was hidden behind something else. Thanks, Cheryl. Okay, let me try that again. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Jaglowitz. Be it resolved that Planning Committee recommend to Township Council that site plan application SPA-68/20 2705274 Ontario Limited, roll number 6-24-069-05 be approved subject to the receipt of securities for stormwater management. If a corresponding site plan agreement has not been executed by January 13th, 2022, this approval will have been deemed to have expired. Any comments? All in favor? I think that carries unanimously. No? Okay. Carries. Opposed? Okay, that carries. Okay, thank you. So I believe we are on to our delegation of Mr. Morgan and Mr. Longo. If you could let them in, please, Jane. Okay, I see Mr. Morgan and there's Mr. Longo. Welcome. All right, gentlemen, I'm not sure who wants to speak first. I let you go ahead and decide.
I will. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, members of the Planning Committee and Director Pink. I'm a permanent resident on a part of Lake Muskoka that has a substantial number of islands. Some of them are quite large. I and a significant number of my neighbors have become concerned that one or more of these islands may become the targets for severance or subdivision and development. We undertook our own study of the relevant bylaws and the official plans and the official plan study papers. Leo Longo of the Airden Burles firm, who is with me today and whom many of you know, assisted us in this review. We came across policy 5.24D of section B of the township official plan, which in respect of island and waterfront access only properties states that the severing of such lots will be permitted, provided that adequate long-term parking and docking facilities are secured to the satisfaction of the township. We sent a submission to the committee on December the 15th, and I summarize it here. Where long-term access is proposed to be with the marina, a letter from the marina stating simply and without more that the marina will make available to the applicant parking and docking facilities seems to be sort of the standard fare these days. Years ago, when such parking and docking at marinas was plentiful, the proffering of such letter was reasonable to satisfy the township. But the practice of proffering that kind of letter became so common as to become entrenched as part of the process. And the question asked of the applicant now is not, can you demonstrate that you have long-term parking and docking at the marina in accordance with policy 5.24D, but rather, do you have your marina letter so we can tick that box? Well, times have changed. Today, the availability of parking and docking is extremely limited to non-existent. Yet the practice of proffering those marina letters continues, those non-substantive marina letters, though it's acknowledged that these letters have little value today in ensuring that long-term parking and docking has indeed been secured. It's our belief that in today's context, these letters should be replaced by the applicant submitting at the time of filing of the initial application, the written enforceable agreements that show that long-term parking and docking arrangements have indeed been secured with the marina as required by the policy. As you know, this issue is being studied by council as part of the official plan review. The current direction of that review is that such access should be deeded or otherwise perpetual. But the review of the official plan is going to take a long time, perhaps years. And we run the risk that developers will rush to sever the island and water access properties using the free pass provided by the acceptance of marina letters. This is clearly an issue. And we think it's appropriate for the planning committee to have the opportunity to give direction to the staff on how to address this issue in the case of marinas, either as a one-time general instruction or in each particular case as such applications are made. Now, Mr. Longo has come up with some suggestions as to how this might be accomplished. Consider it a menu of ideas which you can select from, or if you've got other ideas on how this can be accomplished, please feel free to go off menu. We have no pride of authorship. Leo?
Thank you, Chris and Madam Chair, Your Worship, committee members. As Chris said in our submission, we've presented a few ideas that would afford the Planning Committee the opportunity to provide guidance to staff on ways to address this issue. That is, how to apply the current OP policy while the OP review is underway. The first option is for the Planning Committee to take back from the Committee of Adjustment the authority to deal with severance applications for these island and water access only properties, much in the same way that the Planning Committee has taken this authority back where an application for severance is accompanied by a proposed zoning bylaw amendment. We well imagine that Councillor Edwards may have something to say about this initial option, but we wanted to indicate that it was an option that should be considered by this committee. The second option basically requires two parts to it. One is to ensure that the initial filing of an application to sever an island or water access only property includes sufficient documentation demonstrating the basis of compliance with policy 5.24D. And the second part is if the application contemplates parking and docking at a marina, that the Planning Committee is notified of the severance application as promptly as possible after the time it is filed, so that it could consider the matter with staff and provide comments to the the Committee of Adjustment, excuse me. The third option that we propose for your consideration is to require staff to prepare a report addressing the issues raised in this submission relating to existing and prospective severance applications of island and water access only properties before any such applications are considered by the Committee of Adjustment. And the final one I wanted to address this morning is that Planning Committee could simply direct staff to require that any severance application that is filed for such properties be accompanied by executed written agreements between the applicant and the marina, which demonstrate access to long-term parking and docking facilities at the marina, and that they have indeed been secured as your OP policy requires. I will turn this back to Chris to wrap up and would certainly be happy to answer any questions that committee members might have. And before I go, I'd just like to say, Madam Chair and council members, best of the season to all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Leo. I think that summarizes it. By the way, I mean, we have spent months considering this issue, and we would be more than happy to assist the staff if a draft report is called upon or it determines to make recommendations to the Planning Committee. There we are. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. So I'm going to, as we know, you have also had some conversations with our planning department, and I'm going to ask Mr. Pink just to make some comments and make sure that everybody who's listening in understands the process and from the staff and what is being done with this now. Mr. Pink, can I ask you to do that?
Through the chair, just to provide a bit of background for committee. There is one piece I think that was left out from the delegations as to what the municipality does with water access lot creation proposals, and we have been doing this for many years now, because we do recognize that the letters that are currently received, they are not binding. They're just a letter between two other private entities, a property owner and a marine operator. So for many years now, we have required a consent agreement registered on title. Now that is an agreement between the municipality and the property owner, ensuring and acknowledging that the property owner is aware that public docking and public parking are not utilized as their principal means of access to the property. And as difficult as all planning things are to enforce, actually do recall one situation where complaints were received about an island owner utilizing a municipal ramp for their access. And we discovered that they did have a consent agreement on title, and we were successful in addressing that situation. With that said, certainly these suggestions from the delegates, Mr. Longo and Mr. Morgan, are good suggestions. Staff is not opposed to taking those into consideration with future water access lot creation proposals. And certainly we can require more stringent details or providing those contracts to staff as part of either a complete application or as a condition of approval. Staff's not opposed to that, and we can incorporate those suggestions in future recommendations. I don't think with much need for any further discussion, that's something staff can consider. We could also consider including it as part of the consent agreement, because again, staff's concern, yes, the letter perhaps is not as formal as we would like to see. However, even a contract between a marina and property owner is still just a contract between two other entities that the municipality is not party to. So it's very difficult for the municipality to manage that going forward. We couldn't control what would happen down the road, but what we can do is in the consent agreement, perhaps put a clause that indicates they shall produce documentation at any time that it's requested of them to demonstrate how they are accessing that property. And perhaps that's probably the best option out of all this. And that's something we could easily do as part of our existing consent agreements. We can expand and evolve. And the last thing I would note, as correctly identified, we are even looking broader as part of the official plan review. And as committee members may recall, one of the policy directions is actually to require mainland deeded access as a condition of approval as well. So those discussions can continue to occur as part of the official plan review process. But in the interim, we can certainly consider adding that conditional clause in the meantime. Hopefully that provides some background and clarification as to the municipal process, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pink. Councillor Edwards, do you have any comments at this time as chair of our Committee of Adjustment?
Yes, actually, I can't see any merit to taking it from the Committee of Adjustment to planning. The rules are the rules, and the Committee of Adjustment are trained. They go to conferences, and that if our staff are saying a letter is all right, that's what they go on. If they now say they have to have a binding contract, that's what they would go on. And it would be the same as planning department. So I don't see anything in there that would say it should be removed. What I do say is we should tighten up our rules and then they will be followed by either committee.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. Through you, I wonder if I provide any opportunity for either Mr. Longo or Mr. Morgan to respond to David's what I thought was very insightful positioning. Thank you.
Of course. Okay, Mr. Longo or Mr. Morgan, your thoughts on that?
Oh, you're on mute, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you. As you can see, I'm a Luddite, and I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. Leo, I'll deal with the contract issue. Maybe you can deal with the consent agreement and anything other that you think is appropriate. David, you're absolutely right, or Director Pink, you're absolutely right. A contract is a contract between two parties, and that contract can be amended or terminated at any time between those two parties. But I think it's really important that in the case of a developer who's going to sever the lots and then flip them to the ultimate purchaser. It's important to have that contract because it shows that the marina has actually addressed whether or not it has space by contractually giving the space. And if, you know, the marina letters are pretty informal, and I think marinas and their applicants have been treating them pretty informally. And there's sort of a wide berth of interpretation of what means secured, what means long-term. But when you reduce the arrangements between the applicant and the marina to a contract, which articulates what you've got and that it's binding, it forces them to address this issue as opposed to just, you know, ticking the box on an informal letter. They have to think about it. What is it that you're getting? How long are you getting it for? It all has to be described, and that's very helpful to the Committee of Adjustment to see what it is that's being proffered up here. As to the point on whether or not they can just later go and amend it or change it, a contract, for instance, between the parties which doesn't say that it's assignable to the ultimate purchaser, well, that's a joke, because as soon as the developer sells the property, then the owner doesn't have the benefit of that contract. And so that is because it's not assignable. And therefore that type of contract should be, I would be very wary of that type of contract. So these sorts of contracts should be not only you know, binding, but also assignable. And you might say, well, look, the people that buy the lots ultimately, generally they're not stupid. They are going to make sure that they have access to the property, access to the mainland. And that's generally true. I think we could probably rely upon that as just good, sensible owners looking out for their self-interest. But not for the developers. The developers could care less. If the developers really wanted to do, had their way, they would sever the lot and then just throw the owner to the wolves. So they're not interested in having any sort of anything of this nature as an economic matter. I'm not saying they're immoral, but as an economic matter, they would be inclined to just let the ultimate owners. And that's why at the front end, when the developers are doing it, you've got to make sure that there's something there to start with. The ultimate owner may say, well, but I actually own a property, and so I can do my own deeded access, and I don't need this. Well, okay, and then the ultimate owner doesn't need to accept the assignment of the agreement. But it's really important to have something that people have to pay attention to, negotiate, and have real terms that have real meaning for the purposes of long-term parking and docking with the developer. Leo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, the planning director's twofold comments are both excellent. If the Committee of Adjustment, when dealing with any of these severances of these island and water access only properties, impose the following two conditions. One, of course, that there be a consent agreement entered into between the applicant and the municipality. But number two, had a separate condition that said the applicant shall demonstrate how long-term parking has been and docking has been secured in accordance with the OP. That sets up a conditional severance that then requires the applicant to satisfy the township and the Committee of Adjustment through an agreement. I agree with what Director Pink has said. The current agreement that protects not using public access points to access private lots should be amended by adding an additional clause that speaks to the applicant landowner acknowledges that the use of that lot is tied to having always having a secured agreement for parking and docking on the main land, so that anytime in the future, if that's not being provided, you have the ability to actually shut down the use until that docking and parking is indeed provided. As Chris has said, it may be the rare instance where it happens, but as Director Pink has said, in the past, they've had to implement that or enforce that agreement, and they've done it successfully. So if you added that requirement to your agreement, and be happy to work with Director Pink on the language of that, you would probably be arming the municipality much more so than they are right now in order to protect the public interest, as we're all trying to deal with in this instance. Thank you.
Mayor Harding.
Thank you, and appreciate the delegations, and agree that we can probably do a better job, as Mr. Pink suggests, to register on title. But I want to flip this question around a little bit, and I've heard regularly that you have to show me where you're parking your car, and you have to show me deeded access, and it has to be a thing. With the exception of the one example that Mr. Pink highlighted, that somebody was using a public boat ramp, have we had a lot of complaints or issues from people parking, I guess, in public spaces to access their island properties?
Mr. Pink?
Thank you, through the chair. I'm not aware. I'm not aware off the top of my head of any regular complaints, and I think Mr. Longo and Mr. Morgan and I discussed that. I think it's worked fairly well, but certainly I'm certainly aware that I think in the long term this is an issue that may become more prominent. As we are aware, most of the properties on the mainland have been developed. There's very few vacant parcels remaining or large lots left to subdivide. However, particularly on Lake Joseph and Lake Rosso, there is an extensive amount of large islands that remain intact that contain a lot of subdivision potential. And as we know, particularly on those two lakes, there's limited marinas in operation. And that's been a concern for the municipality for some time, for seeing that down the road, that it could become more of a prominent issue. But I'm not aware of an extensive problem, although we do commonly get in the planning department inquiries from island owners wondering, inquiring about purchasing mainland properties or wanting to solve their access problems long term, sort of recognizing that the marina option is not always the viable or the best option out there.
So, Mr. Pink, in terms of Mr. Longo's two suggestions, could we implement those now? Or do you want to comment on that?
Certainly, thank you, through you. Staff's always looking to improve, official plan conformity, ensuring that, as Mr. Longo indicated, the public interest is addressed. And these are good suggestions and things we, I think, as staff, as professional planners, can take into account when making recommendations to Committee of Adjustment. Councillor Edwards, the chair of the committee, is here and certainly heard these, and I'm sure will recall, and when future applications arise, that we might want to be more stringent on this, and it certainly will be top of mind again as we go through the official plan review process and look at even more greater controls on. So I don't really think anything more needs to be done. I see general nodding of heads in agreement, but if committee members wish to comment on their general support, I think that's a good direction to staff, that this they agree, in principle with these types of directions.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to let Councillor Edwards jump in before you, Councillor Zavitz.
I think that would be a good initiative. If when there's an island severance, it is a condition put on it, rather than just asking for the letter that we've always asked for, and tighten it up so that the committee know what the township, through the planning staff, are looking for. and it would be carried out by either the committee or planning. And that's, so I am in full support of that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zavitz, or did
Thank you.
your hand just came down?
Oh,
Okay.
that's fine. Thank you. And through you. Certainly, I support, very, very supportive of this discussion. David used the word stringent, and I do believe as a cautionary tale, as we, I hope, embark on a more fulsome bylaw piece as we relates to parking, use of docks, ramps, where we ratchet that down. I do hope we do, that this fits right into that runway, and I'm very supportive of this discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Jaglowitz.
Actually, thank you, Madam Chair. I had very little to add other than I would like to thank the two delegations for coming forward and bringing this before it. I think it's been a useful conversation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So yes, Mr. Morgan.
30 seconds, if I may respond to Mayor Harding's comments. I think the reason why you don't see this, or the complaints and things, is that number one, landowners or lot owners are smart. They're self-interested. There's no point in owning an island if you can't get there. Number two, I think one of their other reasons is that Director Pink's consent works. They're told you can't do it, and so they find another way. And then the third comment is that, but developers are different. They're going to flip the lots. They don't care about whether or not the ultimate owner has access to a landing or other mainland. And so they are just inclined to be, I won't say slipshod, but it's not an issue that's important to them, so they'll try and skirt it. And so we really do need to be vigilant when it is a developer that's trying to sever the lots.
Councillor Edwards.
If this is registered on title and the developer is selling it, it's up to the buyer and the buyer's lawyer to check into it at that point. And yes, some people don't check into it, but really, if it was on titles that they had to have it, anybody buying a property should be looking into it very, very carefully. So I think the more we can tighten it up, fine. But I mean, you can't protect some people from themselves. It's unfortunate.
Hey, Councillor Jaglowitz, your hand is still up, but I'm going to guess that you're going to take it down right now. Okay. So I believe what we have here is I think Mr. Pink has the direction that we as a committee would like to go in tightening this up with the suggestions. And I'm going to ask for nods in agreement. If you're in agreement that we will just direct staff to do that, and Mr. Pink will take all of this into consideration, and I think we're going to see tightened up areas for this particular item. So, okay. So thank you, Mr. Longo, and thank you, Mr. Morgan, for your delegation. And I wish you both the best of the season also.
And thank you for your assistance. Bye.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And so I believe now we are at unfinished business, of which we have none, and new business. So I have asked Mr. Pink if he would just briefly chat about the Manette OPA, which is still sitting at district at this point, but I think he'll explain that too, just in terms of steps going forward, and maybe an update of what's happened for those listening in, Mr. Pink, so far with our OPA draft. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I believe, as just to update members of committee, you will recall that a draft official plan amendment for Manette was not approved but endorsed by council to be circulated for a public meeting and to go through the planning process. That resolution, however, was conditional on the District of Muskoka doing the same. Obviously, we wouldn't proceed with the public meeting amending our official plan if it did not conform with the upper tier. The District of Muskoka has now discussed this at length, and there was a lengthy staff report that proceeded to their Public Works, joint Public Works and Planning Committee meeting. I believe it was in November. And staff and the committee, staff recommended and committee agreed that the development as proposed in Minette should be on municipal servicing, not private communal services, as was included in our draft OPA. That recommendation from those committees is going to District Council next week for ratification. If that occurs, which I think we're expecting it to, largely that draft OPA will essentially come back on our laps, and we will have to consider future next steps. I intend to bring that update to you, likely a verbal update in January as to what occurred at the district meeting next week. We can have some further discussions perhaps at Planning Committee in January, and we can aim perhaps for a report or some alternative actions directly to Council in February in order to keep this process moving along as quickly as possible. Happy to answer any questions that committee may have.
Okay, so if there are any questions, Councillor Jaglowitz?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, David, for that report. David, I took a look at the OPA XX that this committee approved, and the way I read it was not contingent on public or private services. It actually endorsed either. In other words, it said it could be private, could be public, could be, I believe, on its own services. What the district did was it was presented with an OPA 49 that asked for multi-unit residential services on private services, and that was rejected. I don't believe there was a rejection of private services on commercial only. That wasn't an option. And so it just seems to me that the way our OPA is worded, it doesn't preclude it going to the public, because it has both options there. The district, and I thought that was the idea. Once it goes out to the public and there's comments, then it comes back to us, and at that point we can deal with that issue. I just don't quite understand why it just can't go out for public consultation. Now, I know you're going to say it has to conform to the district, which is true, but to go forward on public services doesn't require an OPA at the district, it's my understanding. Going forward with private services would. So I'm just not sure why we aren't going out to the public, and then and because what I hear your method, we won't have anything substantial until February, which means it won't go out to the public till maybe March or April, and we're really losing a lot of time. So maybe you could just help me with that.
Actually, Councillor Jaglowitz, I'm going to overstep here because district hasn't ruled on this yet. This discussion is what I see happening in January at the Planning Committee meeting. Once we know the lay of the land, and that verbal discussion in January would be the time, I believe, for you to ask those questions, when we would be discussing whether, once we have a final answer, whether or how we want to move this forward. And I also don't think it's going to delay things, because one of our options at planning could be to ask it to go directly to council in February, so that we're not losing another month. We have many options available to us. I think what I'm trying to say is, let's have the discussion in January once district has finished with it and it's quote back on our lap. So I'm going to ask that you hold those remarks until January.
And I accept your thing, just to point out that the district council is meeting on Monday, which is 2 business days from now. So maybe in your wisdom then, you find a way that it could come forward in January and get dealt with in January, right? So I'd appreciate that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Councillor Jaglowitz. It doesn't leave enough time for a staff report with all of the holidays, et cetera. So we're going to leave it as verbal in January, but I think we can still have a pretty good discussion. Councillor Zavitz?
Thank you, Chair. And I guess to you, Chair, not so much new business as perhaps monkey business, but I can't help but notice, I think I'm confused more than I'm concerned as a Muskoka consumer. I'm getting certainly Cheryl Mortimer just passed out to everyone information from Lakeland Networks. And I guess this is to you. I mean, yesterday, Rogers announces 5G to Muskoka. This is a wonderful new thing. Lakeland. And I think as a consumer, I mean, I'm on Bell, yet I use Rogers for a lot of other services, cell phone, et cetera. I'm wondering if there's an appetite for, and I know it was you, Barb, if I might, Chair, before in terms of broadband, but I'm wondering where we are as a township. I know this is free enterprise. This is the open market competing for our dollars. But I find it very confusing. And so, gee, others must that, I spend $900, $1,000 a month on communications through these different, Rogers and Bell, if you will. I would like to coordinate all of my services with one. So all of a sudden Rogers 5G, well, now I'm going to kick out Bell that I've had for 6 months, but should I support Lakeland because they're here and more local? Yet I see 9 Mile Lake, somebody's putting in fiber from Torrance. This is yesterday. I see this in a picture. So are we just going to let the market prevail? That maybe that's a rhetorical question, but it seems like we are. But do we all just support who we like and go with this supplier or that supplier? Or this is like a frontier town up here as it relates to internet. And I just would wonder, should I be with Lakeland? Am I going to get a better deal with Rogers? Should I be with Bell? Should I go with all these other ones? There's 12 other ones. What are the poor consumers of Muskoka? How are they picking and choosing who they're going to support?
Well, I think picking and choosing comes down to the market and who you want to choose. But to answer your question on a broader basis, Councillor Zavitz, I mean, the district is looking into this overall plan. And at the moment, we had David Sword come in and talk to us, and there's a gap analysis going on in terms of who has internet, what's where, et cetera, et cetera. So before the district and the townships can move forward in addressing how we get everybody to have some, that has to be done. Beyond that, the governments have just opened up all kinds of money for broadband. And what you're seeing is all of these private enterprises getting those grants to put in all of these towers where they're going to get money back. So they're on the lake and they're whatever. But in terms of what's the best package, I think that's called consumer research. So I don't know if you want to add anything more, Mayor Harding. I know you're involved too with this, and I see Councillor Kelly, but Mayor Harding.
I'm sure happy to chime in on it. I think the reality is there's a number of providers who are, as you suggest, are accessing funds and are developing networks. And 5G is a network that's going out through Rogers, and Bell will announce theirs. I happened to see a year ago the towers for 5G in Port Carling, knew it was coming, just didn't know exactly when it was coming. That's not a notification from Rogers to us or anything. That's their existing infrastructure in their network with Hydro One, if you will, to locate on their towers, and their own business development plans to expand. So, from a broadband perspective, we still are working together to try and increase broadband to rural Muskoka. First and foremost, Lakeland doesn't cover it all. Interactive North doesn't cover it all. Bell doesn't cover it all. Rogers doesn't. So there are gaps and holes where people are not covered off. And, you know, the same as we've got a dozen marinas. Hey, you go ahead and pick what marina you want. Right now, you go ahead and pick what supplier for internet you want. I don't believe it's our job to select a preferred internet provider for Muskoka.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to it should be an essential service so that our rural people, underserviced and vulnerable, should be able to have access to. And that's not what you're seeing in this game plan. Councillor Kelly, you do have your hand up?
Yeah, I wasn't blessed with a blue hand today, so I just have to wave. But thank you, and through you, just two quick comments, and partly to echo what the mayor just said. We have actually switched our supplier, both at the lake and in town, and both to different providers, because the available service and the reliability is different in Minette and on Riverdale Road than it is on Bailey Street, where we've just actually switched to Lakeland, and we are the only customer other than the township using that tower that's right in front of the parking lot by Cheryl's car. Again, the good news is, in a free market system, there are better services and better options now than there was 6 months ago. And in a free market system, there seems to me to be a fair amount of competition among the new arrivals to poach and steal people away from other providers. And so there's some pretty good deals to be had. And to Councillor Zavitz, if you would send me $1,000 a month, I'll make sure you get set up.
I'm sure there's no conflict of interest there. Councillor Bazan?
Thank you, and through you, certainly agree with the comments. Our focus is trying to get internet service to all of our constituents to the best of our abilities. A question to Director Pink. Are there planning considerations that we need to be thinking about? And the reason I'm saying this is I hear terms free market and towers going up, and then Councillor Kelly just said he's the only person using one tower. It has been expressed to me, there's a worry that in this frenzy that there's going to be a bunch of towers put up, and then the technology down the road. I mean, I keep having things about Starlink sent to me, which seems to be an interesting opportunity for these more rural settings. But that in itself, one of the issues with that is the impact on the night sky. So I'm just wondering, as a township, from a planning standpoint, are there things we need to be thinking about, or is that something that's beyond our pay grade?
Director Pink?
With respect to coverages, that may be beyond, like you say, our expertise or pay grade. But what I would say is right now our official plan really, and it's not even in our official plan, it's just a municipal policy with respect to telecommunication towers, really just delves into notification procedures. And what I would like to see in our new official plan is at least some guidance and forethought into the types of towers, the encouragement for co-location where possible. Personally, I'm more supportive of the monopine towers rather than the very tall guy-wide towers. And perhaps, and again, I hope to see in our new official plan some guidance as to where we prefer to see these towers and their appearance, so we can put our foot down a bit more when the proposals come forward for concurrence letters for new towers, that we have policies that are supportive of certain types, so we can require those and be more influential when the players come to the municipality looking for concurrence letters. So that is my hope as part of the official plan process.
Just to supplemental on that, the concurrence letters, could you explain how much weight do we have as a township when those come forward to us?
Director Pink?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. I believe we have a fairly substantial amount of weight. Now, I can't say for certain it is a federal approval and ultimate jurisdiction, so I don't want to mislead that council has the ultimate say, but I've been advised by the proponents that if you do not provide your concurrence letter, they're left with the only option of, and the term eludes me, but they go to Industry Canada, or I believe what's now called Innovation Canada, with a disputed application, and they need to plead to Innovation Canada for permission where there's no concurrence from the municipality. It's again, I forget the term, something along the lines of essentially a stalemate, and they can hope for some arbitration from Innovation Canada. So I think your concurrence letters do certainly, that is something that the proponents need to get through that process as smooth and as efficiently and as quickly as possible. So we do carry some weight. And again, I think it would be helpful if our official plan and then therefore had some guidance in it as to the types of towers that we would like to see and the features on those towers, their appearances, etc. And perhaps areas that we would avoid. We do work with towers, again, as much as the radio frequencies and the coverages are a bit out of our expertise. They have approached us with applications, requests that we're in some known scenic areas or too close to the lake, and we've encouraged them to relocate, and they've been generally receptive. But again, some policies to point to would be helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mazan, you're okay? You're okay. Anybody else? Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. And I just can't help myself that this is the end of the week for Rogers. They're going to have 5G service offering 10 times more coverage than any other carrier. Now, I'm a marketing guy, but I do think it is confusing for people. I'm talking about our consumers. I know we can't show a way forward. I suppose we get inundated by Rogers. Now we get Lakeland Networks, and there are sisters or brothers over, one town over. Should we support them? And I think that they're, I don't know, but perhaps at minimum we could show all of what's available, and at least then people would understand, because it is confusing. I mean, I'm a big boy, I can handle it, but I just wonder how other people are, because now they're going to be there's a barrage of information. We just took a city, a rural environment and made it as a city scenario. All of a sudden there's internet everywhere. And 2 months ago, we were talking about people don't have it. Here's COVID, we can't communicate. And all of a sudden now that we're inundated by high-speed internet. And I wonder if we could show some leadership in that.
Well, we can't promote anybody over anybody else, Councillor Zavitz. But in terms of all of the information, I don't know if do you want to put that all together? No, you could do it on your Facebook page. I don't believe that that's really a function of the township, but I'm looking for direction here. I like your comment, but I don't think that's our job here. And so maybe Councillor Kelly's the route to go. Mayor Harder?
Thanks. I think you just sort of said it. I appreciate some things may be confusing for people in Muskoka, but the same thing, do I buy an inboard, outboard? Do I buy a wakeboard boat? Do I buy an outboard? There's so many things in life that are confusing. Do I buy a Mac or do I buy a PC? Do I buy an Android or do I buy an Apple phone? You know what? Let the consumer figure that out for themselves. Our constituents aren't coming to us saying, please advise us exactly what cell provider we should use or what internet we should use. And you can provide individually, if someone contacts you, here's what you use, here's what Councillor Kelly uses, and here's what Councillor Mazan uses. Like we can pick and choose at that point, but I certainly don't believe it's a job or a function of the Township Muskoka Lakes for us to manage our way through. So.
Okay, thank you. So, okay, I'm going to move on now to, I think it's LPAT. Anything interesting, new and exciting, Director Pink? In other words, would you like to speak?
Don't really have anything to add, but we have had the hearing in the name of Butcher, which committee members may recall. A settlement was reached on that proposal, and that settlement hearing was held, I believe it was about 2 weeks ago. We're currently in the midst of a hearing in the name of Boyer that you may recall on Lake Muskoka. I believe that may actually be a previous term of council application. But no decisions have been received. And I believe just one appeal to a minor variance application in the last month. Happy to provide any updates on any existing files if committee had any questions.
All right, are there any questions to Director Pink? All right, if not, I think we're at the end of our agenda here. I'm going to, there's Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I didn't bring this up yesterday when the mayor walked it on the floor about Santa Claus and that. But you know, we're not having our awards dinner this year, obviously. It would be nice if maybe we could give a donation to the food bank. And that from the township or from Santa Claus, whichever. But it would be nice to help out because the firemen didn't do their food collection this year and the food bank could use it. And other than that, I'd like to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas. I'm old enough to say that. And seasoned greetings to everybody else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any comments on that? All right, so I guess Mayor Harding.
Sorry, Barbara. Yeah, sorry. Councillor, I think that's a great idea. And maybe we can coordinate. I'll send out an email to anybody who would like to make a donation to the food bank. And on behalf of council, we can do that accordingly. I think that's appropriate and appreciated. There are long service awards being handed out tomorrow to staff who are deserving of them. And so that is going on. And some of the other regular staff items in lieu of those long service awards, there were some gifts, if you will, donated to staff to recognize them and their hard work over the past year. So even though it's not our traditional Christmas party or long service awards, some other activities have been happening. So anyway, we will figure out a way that we can all make some donations to the food bank. And I think that's a good idea. So thank you for that suggestion.
Oh, okay. Okay, clerk. All right. Okay, I think we're at the end here, so I'm going to read this. Councillor Edwards, Councillor Hayes, be it resolved that Planning Committee adjourn at 12:07 p.m. and the next regular meeting of Planning Committee will be held on Thursday, January 14th, 2021 at 9 a.m. electronically from the Council Chambers, Municipal Offices in Port Carling, Ontario. All in favor? Great. Okay, well, everybody have a really wonderful holiday. Stay safe and enjoy all the Zoom meetings you're going to have with all of your family. And we'll see everybody back here in